So ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to one and all. Good morning. In fact, great morning to each and every one of you. And may I request you to wear your seatbelts and buckle up as we welcome you to Day 2 of PM Gati Shakti Multimodal Maritime Regional Summit 2022, organized jointly by JNPA and MBPA. Let's have a huge round of applause for each and every one of you present here, taking time out to join us for the summit. I am RJ Rahul Manjul, your host for this event. On behalf of the entire team, I welcome you one and all. Let's accelerate and accelerate as we start with Day 2 of the first panel discussion of the day. And may I welcome on stage a gentleman who exudes charisma and confidence every time he steps on stage, Shri Sanjay Sethi ji, Chairman JNPT. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye Shri Sanjay Sethi ji ke liye. And with this, I'm going to introduce our first panelist of the day. He is Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan. Let's have a huge round of applause for Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan. He's a maritime expert and regional director for International Association for Ports and Harbors, Tokyo. He has more than 33 plus years of experience of being the CEO of Mumbai, Malaysia Port, Dubai Port, Adani Ports, CEO for Mundra as well. So let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. हमारे अगले पैनलिस्ट हैं श्री A.K. Singh जी, ACS Transport and Ports, Government of Maharashtra. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. He has had several posts of importance in the public and private sectors: Principal Secretary, Transport and Ports, Home Department, Public Works Department, Government of Maharashtra. Previously, he was the CEO and Managing Director of SciCom Limited. He has also been the Additional Municipal Commissioner, Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, and the Managing Director of MTDC and Director of Tourism, Government of Maharashtra. Let's have a huge round of applause for him, everybody. Our next panelist is joining all the way from Delhi. We have the pleasure of joining and welcoming Shri Jayant Singh ji, Vice Chairman IWAI. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. He is the current chairman in charge of Inland Waterways Authority of India. He joined the organization as vice chairman in May 2021. He has had years of experience and served in various senior capacities and had a very versatile career. He was also Center Director for Center of Disaster Management and also served as the Joint Secretary in the National Security Council Secretariat. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. And we thank him for joining and taking time out and joining us all the way from Delhi. हमारे अगले panelists, well, what should I talk about him? Shri Praveen Kumar ji, Executive Director, Asset Management, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause. He looks after the procurement of civil contracts in the Western Corridor. With his untiring efforts, all the contracts, approximately 23,500 crores on the Western Corridor, have now been awarded and the work is in full swing. He has the nodal authority for implementation of Gati Shakti in DFCCIL, and he has worked in various capacities in Indian Railways. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. And last but not the least, our final panelist of the day is Shri Sagar Ramesh Rao Kadu, Director, MOCI Logistics Division, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. A big round of applause for Shri Sagar Ramesh Rao Kadu. He is currently posted as Director, Logistics Division, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He is leading the efforts in implementation of all digital initiatives under the National Logistics Policy and driving stakeholder coordination and contribution in ports, shipping and inland waterways sector under PM Gati Shakti. He has a vast experience spanning over 17 years in logistics, supply chain and shipping, and he's been instrumental in planning, strategizing and operating EXIM and coastal liner service. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. With this, I'm going to pass on the baton and the mic to Shri Sanjay Sethi ji. Check.
All right. A very good morning to you all. I think we have relatively thinner attendance today, but nevertheless, I assume all are the interested parties. I welcome once again to this summit. The panel discussion for this session is Converging Amrit Kal Vision 2047 of Gati Shakti. Yesterday we've had some very energizing, fulfilling sessions on various parts of how Gati Shakti is conceived, what are the various verticals. We had some very good sessions on the technology part, the data management part, and also an overall session on breaking the silos. Today probably again we are talking about breaking the silos in a way, but convergence of visions probably in the government is at various levels. Vision translation is another part, but if you are not aligning the vision at all, if there is no convergence, probably then implementing it is an impossible task. We have been grappling with this issue of how departments can come together, how state government and central government can come together, or various stakeholders in, let's say, a supply chain. Because we discuss logistics today, we discuss the maritime part of this. That will be the focus, but we would try and understand what are the issues for the rest. So, each of the participants, I will give first some time to say that what is the vision at that level, but I would also like to understand that since we have the topmost representative from the state government, how we can have the understanding of aligning the visions of, let's say, state government and central government. We have a representative government of India, so how to align or converge the visions of various departments, or what are the issues there. Or within our logistics chain or supply chain, how we can take care or align the visions of various. We have the DFCC representative also, because that becomes a very big part of our connectivity of understanding logistics in completeness. I'm just presenting this slide to just set the context, where when we are talking about a vision of, let's say, a port, JNPA, which Mr. Enarasu will also add to in a way, we are talking about, let's say today we said we are getting into this landlord port model, because that's something where the government said that we are getting into this new act. So from now onwards, the government ports should not be running the business themselves. So we should be getting into this landlord model. So that's a vision. Let's say for JNPA, it's almost done already. But for the other ports, this would become a part of a long-term vision, which could take anything from 10 years to 15 years to 25 years. The domestic capabilities or the infrastructure required to enhance capacities will always be a big part, whereby in our case, Vadhavan port looks like the big part of our vision, which will be done in the next decade or so. Similarly, when we broadly say we want to become world leader, this should be in top 10, it basically means that we need to know and understand those strategic areas where we have those capabilities, understand the strengths and weaknesses, and accordingly prepare a roadmap to go ahead. We also take a lot of pride in the institutional development of a training center at our place, which we are planning to enhance, to also get into. In fact, sir, for your information, in December we are having this orientation program for the first time, where the new or the recent recruits, like we have foundation course, for the IAS or for other services. For this sector, there is no such program. People come from different sectors, probably learn on the job, and in fact, it remains a rather niche sector. There aren't too many people who already understand the subject. So this will be a 2 to 3 weeks program for the first time we are doing, and even 1 week by IM. So they come in, give the overall managerial thing, and then we are creating a pool of expertise around this. And in fact, a lot of people in this hall might like to be a part of that, or we've already made a part of that. So this will really add to that talent that is really, there are those gaps in the talent in this sector. And more, if the new ports have to come up and we have to really compete at the international level, I think human resources becomes a very, very big part of it. So that is also a part of the vision. Developing the companies as global leaders, collaborating with international institutions, reducing disparities, aligning regulations. So this is just to put the various themes, and we were just discussing whether we use PPTs for this or not, but this is just to put things together at one place. So I think Enarasu is the one who has a PowerPoint presentation. What we'll do is Enarasu will do that, and then we go to the I would request Mr. Enarasu to just make his presentation. Thank you.
Hello. Respected Chairman, JNPA, Mr. Sanjay Sethi, IAS, dignitaries on the dais, of the dais. It's a really privilege to be here along with you. Since I hail from this place, 1989, from Mumbai Port. I left Mumbai Port 1996, moved to Malaysia. And thereafter I circled again back to home here. I feel that, yes, most of the friends here in this hall. First of all, I love to compliment Chairman JNPA, transforming maritime industry since he has come, moved from the system from PPP to today landlord port, and today we are talking about Gati Shakti. Always front runner because I am amazed with his dynamism, bring the port sector in the international scenario that Indian ports are globally benchmarked today. With this context, I compliment Premier Port of Mumbai, 150 years service, and JNPA 33 years service, still continue to provide EXIM service, and today moved from triple P model to landlord, 100% landlord model because of him. And today, truly speaking, we are admired in the global scenario how the container port is evolved and it is providing service to reduce the logistics cost. Having said so, JNPA is becoming a port of millennium when it is added, as he rightly said, Vadhavan becomes port for the entire region with the 320 million tons of cargo. Transform, this JNPA has today transformed to 100% landlord port. Supply-driven infrastructure. The aim is today zero berth waiting time and faster turnaround time. Seamless connectivity, road and rail, air and coast, which is what is today evolved over the period of time. True container cluster. JNPA is a true container cluster. Unlike any other place, this has DP World, APMT, PSA, Port of Singapore Authority and JM Bakshi today. All these makes JNPA is a part of a complete container cluster which is not available in any of the parts of the country in any ports. So that is having excellent ecosystem. More so which mega supply chain with the FTW sets and SC sets and CFS and ICD. This is becoming a role model for rest of the country. That's where, and in his vision, today, along with Mr. Unmesh, Deputy Chairman, that today ease of doing business, cost of doing business, and speed of doing business. This is what really practice in this become. JNPA has evolved all the three determinants: how easily we can do the business with the trade and industry, how cost reduction can be possible by introducing various measures like including smart port system. That's where today the speed of doing business is happening here. India's first 10 million TUS port, as he has just mentioned yesterday, that it is only port in India which is having a 10 million TUS port. Thanks to him, and I think that is where today we all talk about. But one thing is why there is a evolution happening here, why we talk much on the Gati Shakti, what relevance today it is very important that mega ships are the game changer. This is the main aspect of everything. We have seen 2002 where 9,000 TEUs container vessels were considered to be large. And 2012, it is 16,000 TEUs container vessels. Now we talk about 24,000 TEUs container vessels. There is a complete change in paradigm in the global scenario where the ship size increasing. That's where we really have to keep this in mind while designing our infrastructure. So when we see that how it is evolved, 1980s, 2,500 TEUs container vessels were considered to be largest. 1990s, 4,000 TEUs container vessels. And 2000, 8,000 TEUs container vessels. And 2010, 10,000 TEUs container vessels. And 2020, 20,000 TEUs. Today we talk about 24,000 TEUs container vessels. When the ship size is increasing from 2,000 to 25,000 TEUs, that's where it matters to all of us at this point in time. That's where the Gati Shakti is going to really help us. When the large ship size, what really is going to be a cascading effect on the landside activities. That is where the globally ports and terminals, faster, higher port productivity and environment friendly is what the three factors which is really you have to keep in mind. Shipping market is getting consolidated. Regional ports and competition. Today we work in a monopoly system. We are completely a competitive environment. That's where the ease of doing business, speed of doing business, and cost of doing business as he has brought in today at this point in time. That's economic sense of bringing the trade into complete real-time scenario. And today we talk about complex transport, transshipment, port operation, stiff competition. That's where it is being matters to all of us. When you look at when the ship size are increasing, look at the industry is changing. Absolutely it is moving from unitized mode of transportation, big size, hyperloop freight corridor system is being coming into the system, and more parcels have been fragmented. It will go as barge operations in various parts of the world. That's where we talk about in terms of the shipping side. What really happens in terms of economic sense, since he hailed from the economic side of system, Sanjay Sethi has really looked at in terms of $100 trillion we are marching as a global scenario, as still US and China and Japan continue to be in the top, and Germany, and next now as a proud Indians, we become the 5th largest economies of the world. So this is where the India is really figured to be the 5th largest, and how we have to position ourselves in the international maritime scenario. When we look at the GDP in terms of $100 billion, what really happens with the trade? Trade is something like 17.58 export trade. This is what globally what we are looking at today. And overall, the containers are taking prime transport of the maritime transportation, which is what recently happened. Last year alone, globally more than 900 ports, we handle 812 million TEUs of containers. But India handles only 20 million TEUs of containers. So we have a long years to go to reach the global scenario, but still we are not left out. Time is for now for India. Look at in terms of seaborne traffic, overall global ports, more than 2,000 ports. Tanker with the petroleum and crude oil constitute more than 3 billion tons of cargo, and the rest of the cargo, which is dry bulk and other cargo, is 7.89 billion tons. Overall, 10.8 billion tons of cargo is being handled across the global ports. we all know that globally more than 60 billion tons capacity which is being created, whereas India, we are now looking at 3.5 billion tons. This is what Maritime India Vision 2030, we are really moving forwards. So when we reach the like a 60 billion globally, and we are now looking towards 3.5 billion tons the coming next decade, that's where it matters for all of us. When ports are, how we have to look at how it is evolved for the last more than 100 years. When 1940s, this early port was considered to be a mechanical port. And 1980s container port, 1980s EDI port, 2000 is internet port, now 2020 it is a smart port. That is where we are now looking at whether this can be a global benchmark. So JNPA is becoming a smart port in terms of connecting the stakeholders. That's where his vision towards taking the port gate to the customer gate. That's where the smart port, the logistics community has become the part of the stakeholders. All the stakeholders become the part of the port. That's where today we are moving. Though the rest of the ports here in India, still we are looking at the EDA. We are in the third stage. There are another fourth stage and fifth stage we have to reach. I think the things will happen very soon in the next 10 years. Top 10 global ports, when you look at, just I want to give top 10 ports which are handling more than 15 million TEUs of containers. 7 are from China. That's where today the world is looking at how the port infrastructure has evolved in China, how that can be replicated in India when we are marching towards a $5 trillion economy and manufacturing economy. So when we seen that, that's where we look at whether we can position ourselves in terms of bringing mega ports. Mega connected ports, there are 3 determining factors which are very important for us. One is the cargo volume, which can generate economic value, it can contribute to the country, and land and water surface. Singapore, it has only a transshipment port, but doesn't have industrial clusters. Barcelona, it's a mere waterfront, and Rotterdam, JNPT, it's a volume and industrial clusters. There is every say that, yes, JNPT has absolutely, in terms of JNPA has with the clusters in the in and around more than 150 kilometers, more and more industrial clusters. That's where we make the complete system which is evolved today. I think I must have. So in terms of economic value, economic benefits, what we really looking at today, we are all talking about, we had once upon a time 48 hours vessel turnaround time. Now it has been reduced to 27 hours. I think JNPA has already written less than a day. That's the kind of forward looking which has happened after a lot of things which has completely changed over here. The pattern of working, the system which is completely connected to the entire trade. Today, ships, zero berthing waiting time, faster turnaround time, which is what happens in the mega ports. And mega ports is a mega supply chain is what really is needed. And mega port led supply chain industries which will come from cargo aggregation. And end of the day, it is like bringing down the logistics cost of the India. That's where the economic benefit, what we have to add to the country. In terms of mega transshipment ports, what really, because India is not having mega ports, I think that's where Chairman was mentioning about Vadhavan is going to take that position the next 10 years. And by 2047 with the Amrit Kaal, definitely, sir, with your leadership and the execution today, definitely we can look at that. Similarly, transshipment hub port is also missing in India, where just I give you a genesis of transshipment, shipment from Durban to Manila, which it is the only example, which is not having a connected ports. Singapore has become transshipment because it has to cut short at the Singapore and it is moved to Manila, and Singapore has become the transshipment port. That's where the hub and spoke model of transshipment which is works, and definitely JNPA can, Vadhavan can become also as a hub and spoke model of transshipment, where this part of the world where this can act as a hub port and the remaining all the feeder ports, that way this can act as a very hub port in this part of the world. where I just wanted to hear, when I joined those days, I used to wonder how Singapore has positioned as #1 port, even today, with the way how it has become a mega transshipment hub, handling 37.5 million TEUs of containers. One port alone handled 37.5 million TEUs of containers. Bunkering sales alone with 50 million tons of cargo. Total cargo volume alone, one port, 599 million tons in the last year. And ships more than 2.81 billion tons of gross tonnage, which has happened in Singapore. And similarly, I hail from Mumbai when I started my second career there in Malaysia. Westport transshipment hub today it is handling 12 million TEUs of containers, and which is a 10-kilometer long quay length, which is another mega port, which has evolved over the last 20 years. It has not taken much, 30 years, 40 years, 60 years, but it is only 20 years it has made a 12 million TEUs port. Definitely, sir, with your vision, where Vadhavan will attract more and more shipping lines, and it will become the part of India and pride of India to make that as a minimum 25 million TEUs container port. This is in true sense we have witnessed in the last 2 decades, where another port in Malaysia, which is again 11 million TEUs container port, which has started in the year 2000. It is another port which is in Johor, near just neighborhood of Singapore. 12 million TEUs today they are handling annually. And this is port of Tanjung Pelepas, Malaysia port. And just not only in the Malaysia and Asian region, we also seen that Colombo is surveying on our transshipment containers. And today Colombo port has handled 7.3 million TEUs annually. And this is again, 60% of the containers are going from India to Colombo, and that's become transship. That's where India has really looked at. And why India has really the time for India is now, since India has been a front runner in the global economy, self-reliant and inward-looking, and import-driven to export-driven economy, and make in India to make for world, and exports to value-added exports, raw materials to finished goods, and import-driven. We always continue to be import-driven. Today we wanted to be export competitive. That's where today the Indian economy is well set, and exports are $419 billion. I think by 2025, with the vision of $1 trillion, I think Gati Shakti will definitely provide. And more so here, the $5 trillion economy, how it is related to our logistics. Since everyone talk about logistics cost is the huge here in India compared to rest of the nations. India's logistics market is something around $215 billion. Cargo and goods have to move around with the 3.3 million square kilometer. So when we have the 3.3 million square kilometers, definitely we have to reach the hinterland location very quickly. The time and cost is the 2 determinants of the logistics. I think that's where, and I'm sure with all the Gati Shakti program will make us the logistic performance index, LPI, to top 30. I think that will be easily achievable when we structurally work towards making this to happen. And additional cost really we are incurring more than $250 million annually because of the transshipment. That's where we talk about India's transshipment in the next decade, and Colombo, Singapore, and Port Klang today handles 85% of the cargo, and India's transshipment is best opportunities in the southern tip of India. That's where we talk about more on the transshipment. And ideal hub, which has been widely discussed during the Maritime India Vision 2030, we would have one transshipment mega hub in the southern, which will eradicate our losses, exchequer $250 million annually. I think I'm sure that will happen, and that will make us proud in terms of international scenario. Coming to Gati Shakti, yes, sir, having said so, when we are looking at a 3.3 billion tons of cargo capacities, which is going to be added the next 10 years, Gati Shakti Sagarmala, which is again $65 billion, 800 projects, definitely this will give very good progress in terms of connecting the 3.3 million square kilometer area. And similarly, Bharatmala road connectivity, especially when you look at the economic corridors, 26,000 kilometer, inter corridors, 8,000 kilometers, which is all absolutely for need of the hour for India in terms of, like we talk about freight corridor. This is the industrial corridor which will connect, and even I'm very proud to say, BS officer, JNPT when the container lands, it is in connected to Cochin. I think that's where it is like a JNPT containers will come to Chennai and connecting to the eastbound. I think that will be in reality the next 10 years. That will happen, and definitely the dedicated freight corridor will change the gear in India in terms of connecting the entire hinterland, where we all definitely look at Delhi, JNPA, and Northeast, Ludhiana, Dankuni, which is already almost in the progressing stage. The rest of the three, which is Kharagpur, Vijayawada, and Itasi, Vijayawada, and Goa, Chennai, this will be again in the pipeline. I think Sir is here and he will deliberate much on that. And definitely this $150 billion Gati Shakti will create our ports and road and rail and coast, which will be a model for the rest of the nations. And definitely the technology, again, I think yesterday's sessions were a brilliant session where we wanted to look at the PCS, NLP, ULIP, IoT, and blockchain. I think these are all the future technology which will definitely take us to the next level, how the industry is well connected to the entire region and the entire stakeholders. I think that's where, and we look at Gati Shakti in port is something to handle the mega ships, and we build mega ports. We also look at the double stack container trains and hyperloop. I think, sir, you have to look at with this whether hyperloop freight corridor, whether now itself India can look at, and I think the study states that Mumbai and Pune there is hyperloop corridor which is already been tested, and we would be benchmark in terms of freight corridors with over the years of time. With this, I think Gati Shakti, why it is really helped? Yes, I hail from Chennai, where we 2008, 20 kilometers elevator corridor which was put in the back seat. But today it is taking that 5,000 crores, and this will be a Gati Shakti first and last mile connectivity. And India also have to take how the China's special economic zone model, where they have started only 2013. Within the last 9 years, they built 36,000 kilometers SEZs. I think in India, all the SEZs put together, we will be like 300 square kilometer. So we have long way to build more and more SEZs. I think that will help us. I think along with the dedicated freight corridor, we will need to have the SEZ zones and all kind of things. This will be a benchmark for the global system. Time now India building mega port, TP port and SEZ. Thank you, sir. And that's where we'll talk about, and thank you so much for providing this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Enras. I think we have a good overview, lots of points to discuss. I think I'll go to the state government now. Sir, one of course is what is the vision of the state government in general, but also about understanding the alignment of central government vision and state government vision. Maybe you can discuss Vadhavan Port also, because we definitely need alignment or convergence on that issue. So without taking much time, sir, may I request you to speak.
Thanks, Sanjay. And Mr. Enrasu, that was a very illuminating, rather daunting presentation that you made, putting all of us on a spot. The state government has recently embarked upon writing a new port policy. And I would not like to divulge a lot of stuff out of it because it is yet to go to the cabinet. But I would say that the overall idea is to... Yeah, can you hear me now? Great. So the state government is actually looking at the next at least 5 years. 25 is a very long period of time. As Mr. Enrasu just presented that in 10 years, the size of the ships is doubling. And in 20 years, the generation of the port is changing. So if we look at a 25-year vision, we'll have to first look at it from the principle that the future is already here, but perhaps unevenly distributed. So the future for, say, an MMB would be a JNPA, whereas the future for a JNPA could be a Singapore or a Busan, and the future for Busan and Singapore would be ports which are yet to emerge, and therefore they might be thinking something different. As far as we are concerned, we are trying to look at the port sector from the perspective of how many major ports can the state have, or for that matter, how many large ports can the state have, and what kind of investments will we be able to attract. For the Maharashtra Maritime Board, the policy has always been a landless port. So what we have been giving out is just the water, and we invite the private sector to participate in it, and they have built most of the ports that we have. And of the 16 ports that are operational, we handle about 52 million metric tons of cargo every year, which is bigger than what the Bombay Port Trust actually handles, if you take out the liquid part of the Mumbai Port Trust. So we believe that maybe these so-called non-major ports of today would become the transshipment ports of the major ports of tomorrow of India itself. Because India, if it has to grow at the rate at which we intend to grow and become a $5 trillion economy, it will itself consume a lot of stuff, and that consumption has to move on water. And if that consumption has to move on water, we'll need a lot of transshipment to happen within India itself. And hopefully some of these non-major ports would act as those transshipment ports for the larger or the mega ports which are going to come up in future. On the railway front, we have already come out with a policy which says that we will contribute 50% of all equity that is required for any railway project coming up in Maharashtra. And most of the railway projects that are happening in Maharashtra, the large railway projects, are with the 50% contribution from the state government. We have also recently approved the shareholders agreement for the bullet train, which is basically for passengers and not so much for cargo, wherein we have taken 25% of the equity of the total project cost. In the DFC also, we have been assisting in the acquisition of land, in the building of the ROBs, and any other issues that are coming up. And this I am right now talking in terms of the Transport Secretary, because I coordinate from the state government for the railways. On the road sector, we have been working with the NHAI. In fact, almost about 50% of the national highways is being built by the state PWD and the Maharashtra State Road Development Corporation. So while NHAI is operational in Maharashtra, 50% of the so-called national highways are also being built directly by the state government. So to answer your question, Sanjay, we are trying to work in great collaboration and coordination with the central government. All our acts are also somewhere subordinate to the central acts. So on the Central Motor Vehicle Act, the Central Motor Vehicle Act amendment applies to the entire country, and we immediately try and incorporate all those things into the Maharashtra Motor Vehicle Act. In any case, the law is such that whatever they write overrides whatever we have written. On the port front, there is a little bit of a dispute that is currently on, because the central government has certain ideas about how non-major ports should be dealt with. And we also have some ideas about how non-major ports of the state government should be dealt with. And that is where there is some more convergence which is perhaps necessary. And a lot of discussion is going on. Hopefully, there was a meeting which was scheduled last month which was postponed. But hopefully those meetings will thrash out all the issues as far as regulation of non-major ports by the central government is concerned. But personally, I believe that the vision of Gati Shakti is that we need to work together to ensure that wherever there are issues, they are thrashed out quickly enough, and we do not work at crossroads with each other. If we have to achieve the vision which Mr. Ennarasu has just kind of pointed out here, of becoming a country which will be a $20 trillion country, say by 2070, or if we are looking at the Amrit Kal of 2047, if we have to become a $10 trillion economy by 2047, then all our ports will have to become 5 times bigger than what they are today. And this 5 times number sounds very small, but actually when you think in terms of creating 5 more JNPAs, 5 more MBPAs, 5 more everything that we have in the country, then the overall understanding of the whole thing becomes a much more larger. And the complexity also increases in geometric proportion. It does not increase in arithmetic proportion. As far as the vision to connect our non-major ports is concerned, as I've just said, we are contributing to the road development program, we are contributing to the rail development program, and we are very hopeful that with 3 interventions, that is economics, technology and policy, we will be able to actually achieve the vision that the Honorable Prime Minister has laid out of creating an India of 2047 in the next 25 years. We have today definitely not reached the potential that we ought to have reached by 2022, but there is a certain advantage of actually coming a little late, because if you build a port which was a 2nd generation port, to make it a 5th generation port becomes a lot more difficult. However, if you build a 5th generation port from the very first day, you can actually build a seriously important, technologically competent port. Now, the other side of mobility also needs to be seen as to what is the future of mobility itself, whether it be cargo or whether it be humans. How much of Uberization is going to take place? How many vehicles, how many ships would become autonomous? This also then would connect to the future of work itself. Already, Norway has experimented with an autonomous ship which is called the Yara Birkeland. We have so many autonomous cars and trucks driving all over in the US today, and they are kind of proven. In fact, it was almost about 4 years ago that I did a test ride on a Tesla which was autonomous. So today they must have definitely gone way beyond that. We are retrieving rockets which are being sent to launch satellites for reuse. So when we look at that kind of future which is already present in various parts of the world, then we need to look at what is it that we need to build for 2047 so that we don't remain the 2022 of 2047. And the world has by that time gone on to say 2090 or something. Because today, as Mr. Enarasu pointed out, we do not have even one single 5th generation port. We are still struggling with ownership models. We are not struggling with creating ports which are actually as big, as large, as competitive as say a Singapore or a Shanghai is. And that is where I think we need to all put our minds together and see that if we have a vision of 2047, then how do we actually get to it so that at least the future that is present amongst us in various parts of the world is incorporated into our policies, is incorporated into our program, and we achieve something in 2047 which is at least as good as what 2047 would offer in the rest of the world. And this is where I think we need to apply our minds. We are thinking in terms of, as I said, better connectivity for our ports, better connectivity by road, by rail. In fact, Amit must have given you a presentation that we have a few more berths coming up in 6 different ports. We are trying to get in LNG facility, LPG facility in our ports. We are trying to connect them to national highways through various road projects. Almost about 12 of them are on. We are trying, almost about 17 of them are on. We are trying to connect them with the railways, where I think 12 of them are under consideration of this, under the Gati Shakti program. But that is still going to make it a port of 2022 only, if at all it is a port of 2022. It is not going to make us a port of 2047, even if we complete all these projects. So the vision that we need to today give to ourselves is to see what is the future which is present amongst us today in the rest of the world. Try and see how we can incorporate at least that future into our present so that we are at par with that which is already existing. And having done that, create ports and create the logistics infrastructure of 2047, which is at least as good as the best in the world in 2047. Thank you very much.
Even though you haven't touched upon the other part of aligning on Vadhavan port, but I'll come back to that.
Well, as far as personally I'm concerned, I am very committed to that port project. In fact, my own suggestion has been that we will take a larger equity in that project rather than taking a smaller equity, because I believe that it is going to be financially a very profitable project. However, there are many impediments to it. State government is not the only one. And let me not say all that in this gathering. But I personally feel that since the central government has already approved it in its cabinet, and since the Honorable Prime Minister has himself somewhere stated that this has to happen, so it will happen. And the state government will definitely ensure that it is in full alignment with the central government's directives as far as this project is concerned.
I don't know whether there are journalists here, but they've got a bite that they wanted. Okay. Okay, I think I move on to Sagar right now, just on this point that let's say when we make our visions, shipping ministry is making a vision, we did an MIV 2030, we are talking about building mega ports, but whether the capacities that we are talking about are required or not. Ports by themselves mean nothing if the exports or imports that they deal with are in tandem with that. So one was when, let's say, when we went for the approval of our Vadhavan project, somebody in finance ministry wrote on the file that the current capacities of ports are utilized, let's say, up to 50%, so why do you need a port? Now the point is that whether those capacities are appropriate to handle the kind of trade that we are talking about. So this alignment or this understanding is the most important part of this convergence of vision. So to understand, of course, you deal with logistics and commerce ministry, so you can broadly tell us about that, and also this requirement of alignment for which ports are made for. We cannot discuss ports in isolation. It means nothing. So may I request you, please? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So when we say a vision 2047, we discuss a lot of figures, 30 trillion economy, 35, 40 trillion economy. Then we need to understand when we talk of these figures, when economy, the logistics is the backbone of the economy, because we have an export target, we have various schemes, Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. For that, the major part is when logistics is the backbone of the economy, then infrastructure is similarly a base of the logistics infrastructure. When the Honorable Prime Minister gave this vision of the PM Gati Shakti, it started with the idea of the multimodal connectivity for the infrastructure development. When we say a multimodal connectivity, sir, the silos are removed. We don't discuss the MOPSW or the railways or the road. Multimodal itself bringing all these mode of transportation together. So rightly said, like the capacity, we are building the capacity, but the export growth is there. So sir, like we all know the statements of the American president, America is the great country because of the roads, or America has become the great country because of the roads or the infrastructure. So on the similar grounds, we have so much 7,500 kilometers the coastline. Now the port, when we are bringing the world-class ports, the last mile and the first mile connectivity was always a discussion. We have seen a lot of conferences that all the conferences used to be discussed only on the bad roads, no connectivity. Now this is what we are working on. When we are working on the development of the port, simultaneously the emphasis is given on the road and rail connectivity. Now the sir had asked the question like, do we have the capacity? Now this is what the brainstorming we have to see, whether to wait for the cargo and build infrastructure, and that will bring the investors and the cargo to grow. That is what, like sir, the vision is currently with the central government. Definitely there are budget allocation, prioritize is being done, but the emphasis is definitely, when we are talking about the vision 2047, definitely the export importance into the economy, port is, gateway ports, that first mile, last mile connectivity is very much important. And investment in the bigger ports, rightly again sir has said, building the ports, that is one thing, and bringing the efficiency in the ports. That is also one of the factor what we are considering, sir. Like we have already like said, the efficiency from the 2 days, 3 days, now we are 28 hours into the port operations. The cargo used to reach like from it, when originates from the North India, it used to take 7 days, 8 days. Now that it has come to 3 to 4 days, the target is again to reduce it to 2 days. So all these DFCs, the express highways, Bharatmala projects, again it is the planning for the 2047 vision to bring in the efficiency. And ultimately, though the capital investment in a short term, there will be a cost escalation, but in the long term, this efficiency will reduce the cost, and that is what the idea is.
Okay, I'll come back to you after some time. Jayant, are you there on the line? Can we connect, Mr. Jayant? Yes. I can't hear you. Can you put that? Are you muted?
Am I not audible?
Yes, now yes. Okay.
Am I?
Yes, you're audible now, Jayant. I think
Right, sir.
may I
Yeah.
request you to, of course, inland waterways is a very big important component of this whole story. What we could do is that you could tell us about the vision of not just the authority but about inland waterways in this country in general, and also tell us about the areas of convergence that are required. Over to you, Jayant.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Of course. Go ahead. Loud and clear.
Right. Oh, wonderful, sir. So I have a presentation. I don't know whether I can run it there, but I'd rather.
I'm sure if you want to upload and if it is doable, we can do that.
Yeah. I will.
Go ahead.
In
Go
that
ahead.
case, I will. I have.
You put it
I have
here?
a presentation and a very small one, and I've tried to make it a very crisp one. Is it visible?
Not yet, but maybe there's a little lag. Let's see. Yeah, it's visible now.
Yeah, okay, right. So, sir, since we call it the Amrit Kal, it couldn't have been both literally and metaphorically true, because I won't get into the economics of it. We are before a very a knowledgeable audience here, domain experts. So, needless to say, waterways has an intrinsic advantages over other modes in terms of economy, and we seek to leverage that. Now, the only problem is that the modal share is very small. And as you rightly said, I mean, logistics being the backbone, and we have to bring down the cost there. We simply can develop one more at the expense of others. So there would be an opportunity cost we would incur in case we were to develop inland waterways at the cost of others. So that's very intuitive and it's very commonsensical. But having said that, sir, it is worth spending a little, because our expenses on inland waterways have been very insignificant, and sky is actually the limit in every sense of the word here. So if we look at the modal mix of the different countries, the developing, I mean, most of them are G20 countries. India is actually languishing at 5% is IW is actually not 5%, 5% including coastal. So the actual share, modal share, is only 2%, which we can definitely increase. Now, as I said, it cannot be at the expense of others, so we have to develop it in a way that we are able to converge it with other modes. So this is what is the reality, sir, as far as inland waterways are concerned. These are the navigable waterways that have been declared navigable, where if we spend a little bit, we would be able to get a lot of dividend. So I prepared this map because it gave a very state-wise kind of a distribution, and this is what it looks like. So we have the Indo-Gangetic plains. These are the more perennial rivers where there is a lot of scope, partly because of infrastructural deficiencies, as they have been historically over the years. The inadequacy is there, and the fact that we have glacial flow and all coming in, so we can have very long rivers. Of course, it pales in comparison with the Mississippi. So we chose a very ambitious project called Jalwan, because on the Ganga, I'll be talking about that in a little while, and of course Brahmaputra. On the west coast, sir, there are the pockets. If you look at Gujarat, Maharashtra, the Amba River, Dabhol, and Revananda. The good news is that these are all tidal rivers, so they don't need the kind of interventions that we need on the eastern side. The bad news is that the leads are very small. But having said that, this is one of the fastest, in fact, the fastest growing mode of transport in this country. We started at a low base, so that gives us that advantage. But having said that, the results are evident, and this is what I'll try to show in the next couple of slides. So this is where inland waterways stands up. And the good news is that we are growing at 18% CAGR. And most of this growth is very complementary growth. It is like very intermodal, and it is not really in competition. Just to quote a small example, you see, we are doing a lot of work in Bengal and starting something big in Odisha. Now, these places are traditionally, I'm from the railway cadre myself, so I know these are the areas that are traditionally bread and butter for the railways for the bulk traffic that moves. Now, how inland water implements is like this. Now, for a typical box and the coal rakes of railway, which is actually the staple of railways as far as the freight earnings are concerned, carries about 3,000 to 3,200 tons of cargo. Now here, what we are doing is anything less than that, say anything ranging between 300 and 350 tons up to 1,500 tons is very, very amenable for movement on inland waterways. Reason being that bigger vessels requiring greater draft would not be navigable round the year. So anything more than a truckload, less than a rake load, inland waterway steps in. And this is why, sir, we are having an 18% CAGR since 2012-13. And this is the growth, sir, as it stands today. And even this year, sir, we are 30% more than more than what we were last year. So as per the Maritime India vision, our target was 200 metric tons per annum. This is something we really sincerely hope that we will achieve by 2025. But we have set ourselves the more ambitious target of 500 million tons per annum and a 5% share in logistics. Now, how do we achieve that? Because really we don't have an ecosystem. So very, very briefly, so this is the ambitious project I was talking about. A 1,300 kilometer long waterway starting from Varanasi right up to Haldia. Good and bad. Good is that we tried to really cut the, we took the hardest bit first, because Indian rivers, as I'll state up, are not really conducive for waterway. Our rivers are wide and shallow instead of being deep and narrow. That said, we've gone ahead with very, very close association with World Bank and drawing a bit of their expertise from Bangladesh and our own learning wherever we have faltered, centered around three essential pillars: terminal development, which actually should happen last, fairway maintenance and related infrastructure, and of course the augmentation of the vessel fleet. So this is what it is, and we have rendered the stretch from Varanasi to Haldia navigable, though the stretch from Varanasi to Patna is not navigable round the year, and this has challenges, and I'll talk about that. And of course another one. So this is the commodity profile that we have. And here's where we lend our waterways very complementary to the other modes, is that the cargo profile is diverse. So we have break bulk cargo like fly ash, like chips, which is a stone aggregate, coal. Then we carry bad consignment, and we have now started carrying containers also. Now, this is one area which I really wanted to highlight. Unfortunately, this trend is more pronounced on the East Coast, where we are running now, the Maersk, in fact, is operating a scheduled container service from Haldia to Bangladesh via waterways. And Bangladesh is going to be very, very critical to our Act East policy and our growth story, as I'll try to highlight in this slide, sir. Now, this is, of course, I'm sorry, the audience is primarily from Maharashtra, but this template can be in some sense replicated, both in terms of its methodology and in the way we go, and in terms of the outcome. So the IBP is basically the Indo-Bangladesh Protocol route. So we have all heard the stories about the kind of delays that happen in Indo-Bangladesh trade, where trucks are, they are lying at the checkpost for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Rakes are getting stuck. There is no cross-border movement as effectively as we want. However, the waterway trade is thriving. And how? So we have 2,700 kilometers of waterway declared between as Indo-Bangladesh Protocol route, which is there given in red and blue in this map. And this is growing, sir. And this is growing at a phenomenal rate. In the last 1.5 years alone, it has gone up by more than 50%. And the most heartening thing is, sir, that this trade is growing both in terms of its commodity profile. Earlier it was all fly ash. Now we are, getting into more finished products and secondary products. And also it is growing in terms of the number of ports of calls. Earlier it was confined to only Calcutta and Narayanganj, but now we have more and more ports adding up to this. So with this kind of template in mind, and in consonance with the Prime Minister's Act East policy, one thing that has been conceptualized was the Eastern Waterway Transport Connectivity Grid, now which now we call the Regional Waterway Grid. So we basically plan to integrate Brahmaputra via Bangladesh. Now this is what the grid actually looks like. It integrates coastal shipping. So the idea being that in confidence with Act East on the one hand, and B, leveraging on the kind of economic growth that Bangladesh is achieving. This is the grid we want to create. Now, how it kind of dovetails into the developments on the west coast is that a lot of this can further be extended via coastal shipping all the way to Odisha and onward via coastal shipping to the Western Indian ports. So this is another thing that we are conceptualizing, and this is truly in the spirit of Gati Shakti, sir, for three reasons rather. Number one, that land is at a premium at this location. This area that we talk about is perhaps the most densely populated part anywhere on the planet, and acquiring land very virtually impossible. And any augmentation of railways, any augmentation of roadways would entail land acquisition, so that is ruled out. So much so, sir, that in Bangladesh, all SEZs mandatorily have to be on the waterways. So this is what we seek to leverage. The second thing we want to ride on is the crest of the economic growth of Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh has been the fastest growing economy in this part of, in fact, globally, sir, over the last, one of the fastest growing in the last decade. And now, since the commodity profile is changing, that country requires material. It requires fly ash, it requires cement, it requires a lot of construction material, it requires a lot of cotton yarn. So that can be moved. And strategically, sir, also this is important. We have a lot of Chinese intervention and all coming in, and this can substantially offset. And where it really fits into the larger strategic game plan is that it is able to integrate Nepal and Bhutan also very effectively. So I just stop at that, sir, because I understand the audience is primarily from Maharashtra. So this is the kind of the institutional structure that is envisaged. And this is another, I'll just talk briefly about what we're trying to do in Odisha, because this template can be replicated in Maharashtra on a smaller scale. So this again area is very rich in minerals, which has traffic both upstream and downstream from Bay of Bengal right up to Talcher, about 250 odd kilometers. This is now we are developing as a very, hopefully, if God willing, if everything falls into place, in a very genuine PPP comprised with an SPV that will be that would comprise the state government, the Indian Waterways, and a multinational entity, either most like ADB or the World Bank. And the idea being that, sir, again, this is ecologically a very fragile zone, heavily forested, land acquisition is a problem, and the ports of Dhamra and especially Paradip are having perpetual problems of congestion. So we would look to offset that problem. How it can be offset in Maharashtra is because of this, sir. If you see this slide of the development of West Coast waterways, Maharashtrian waterways in Maharashtra are growing very substantially, sir. A lot of cargo on Amba, on Revananda Creek and Jaigarh, as I said, mentioned earlier. These rivers thankfully do not require the kind of capital intervention that probably in the east. With good night navigation, with better quality vessels, better quality navigation techniques like those virtual buoys and so on, and other satellite aids, we can definitely augment that. So the sum and substance of all this is basically that it can be a force multiplier as far as bringing down the logistics cost is concerned. Now the challenges, the slide is basically before you, the challenges that I wanted to kind of outline here. And each of these challenges that I mentioned actually is the subject of a PhD thesis in itself, be it in geography or in macroeconomics. And most of all is the point number 2 and 3, is deficient private capacity, deficient state capacity. State capacity because both in terms of the technical expertise, be it river training and navigation, I'm struggling. We really don't have those kind of engineers. We don't have down the line. We don't have the kind of people who can actually work on dredging and fairway maintenance. So a lot of learnings are very iterative. There are no set templates because even if I contact people in Holland or maybe in Vietnam, they have their own, their different geographies. So we have to, evolve our own strategy. Number one. Number two, deficient private capacity. I don't blame that deficiency because market is still developing. So it is a very nascent sector and the state will have to stay invested. And it is a very unorganized sector. That said, sir, the strengths are very evident. I think all of us, with anybody with a double-digit IQ, would be able to figure out what are the strengths and opportunities. So what are the actionables here? Creating greater capacity within the department, within the government, more in-depth market studies. Why? Because we need to understand what cargo is actually amenable for waterways movement. Otherwise, we would be stuck with two major white elephants that we have created in Varanasi and Sahibganj. It has to be more market-driven. And the penultimate point, sir, that I made, the institutional interaction with the state government is important. And here we have made a lot of headway with Assam, with UP and Bengal and Jharkhand. So unfortunately, I must confess we have been as forthcoming in Maharashtra and Gujarat. But now that we have a little more bench strength, we'll probably be looking at that and then operationalizing the app. So the bottom line is that the government will have to stay invested, and these are the key issues I'll flag again. Traffic is there, it is cheap in the long run, but we have to create the entire ecosystem comprising the vessels, the fairways and technology. We have to build capacity and we have to create a regulatory infrastructure. The dilemma is whether the state should enter, should we spend money? And so now, given the kind of outlay, now let me bring some numbers here. The biggest endeavor ever taken on waterways in India has been on Ganga, 4,500 crores, out of which we spent about 2,300 crores, which is nothing. When we see that the station redevelopment plans of Indian Railways is about 10,000 crores for only 2 or 3 stations. So this dilemma, I think, is a no-brainer. I think state will have to stay invested. All waterways have taken decades and even centuries to develop. The second is, of course, again, is related whether firms, we get private enterprise or do we get hierarchies. And somewhere down the line, we have to understand is not a panacea. As you know, every time, I don't blame the political executive or the policy makers, but even bureaucrats coming in a far illiterate saying, PPP le aao. Bhai, PPP aise nahi aayega. We are not JNPT, we are inland waterways from areas where demand exists. So this is what I had by means of the presentation. I'll now, if I'm visible, I just wanted to add a few more things here. Ports have a reasonable autonomy, sir, as far as, I think so, with regard to their capacity building of their staff. So if we could evolve some sort of a mechanism for cross-staffing, whereby, people from IWT sector can work in the ports and vice versa, especially at the lower level, we would be able to generate capacity in this sector, sir. And of course, the IWI will have to take the initiative in engaging with the state governments. As I mentioned, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, and Kerala. In fact, I should have mentioned Kerala. Kerala, we have engaged, and despite great degree of civil society activism there and a lot of reservations about IWT, I'm very happy to inform you, sir, this is one area where even the Kochi Metro is integrated with Indian Waterways there. So this is the kind of, the roadmap that we have in mind. And when we talk of Gati Shakti, it should not only be about freight. I think it has to be about movement of people, the intra-city. Now we are having large urban conglomerations where movement of people of passengers, the commuter transport would be of equal significance, especially given the fact that our service sector is a very, very important contributor to our overall GDP. So that's the roadmap, sir, I have for IWT, and I have a lot of questions, but I'll be happy to take some, sir.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you very much, Jayant. I think there is a huge round of applause here. I hope you can hear it. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I'll first go to the DFC first now, and then take up a few more questions. In fact, I had written quite a few, but I don't know whether we have the time to deal with everything. I think I'll request you to please talk about the vision and also about what we are calling as convergence.
Hello. Yes, it's fine now. Thank you, sir. DFC, as you know, that it is a game changer project. It has been conceptualized, and we are working on presently 2 corridors, that is from Western Corridor from Dadri to JNPT, and Eastern Corridor from Ludhiana to Dankuni. And as of now, because as you know that we talk about, since yesterday we are talking about the logistics cost. As of now, we are having about 14%, and we want to reduce this logistics cost. DFC definitely, if it is fully commissioned, then definitely it will reduce the logistics cost. So we are working on these two projects. As of now, we have commissioned almost about 50% of the project on the western corridor. On the eastern corridor, we have already completed about 50%. Apart from these two corridors, Ministry of Railways has given the mandate for working on 3 more corridors, as my colleague has mentioned briefly about these 3 projects. One is East Coast Corridor, one is East-West Corridor, and one is North-South Corridor. And put together, it is about 4,200 kilometers. We are working on the detailed project report and learning from the existing corridor on which we are working. We have taken some steps in the new corridors. For example, in the detour alignment on the western corridor, some of the sections, our bank height is about 5 to 6 meters. Now, when we talk about inviting the private freight terminals, we find it very difficult because for a yard situated about 9 to 10 meters from the ground, it takes a long connecting line, about 10 to 15 kilometers, when they can connect to their private freight terminal. So on the new corridors, learning from the failures of these 2 existing corridors, we have reduced and we have taken a conscious decision that we will not increase the height of the bank, not more than 2.5 meters, so that connectivity, if it is required to the private freight terminal, it can be reduced. So these are some of the lessons that we have learned. And as Mr. Ajay Patel from the BISAG has told yesterday, that this Gati Shakti National Master Plan, we are also facilitating other ministries, and we are having a huge stakeholder consultations. Then we have provided all these plans on these BISAG portals, and it is clearly visible. Suppose anybody wants to plan their alignment, they can very well see our alignment on the eastern corridor, western corridor, and the new corridors, so that they can plan very well. So we are working in as mandate given by Gati Shakti portal, and we are also facilitating other ministries by way of uploading all this data on the National Master Plan. Thank you, sir.
I think you've been rather short and sweet on this, but हमारे जो पोर्ट के लिए जो DFC का इंतजार है, वो 2023 जो है वो 2 या 3 बार कहा गया सर, पर अब वो क्या बोलते हैं, इंतहा हो गई इंतजार की. हाँ, तो वो जो the target has been changing. It's like a moving target after every few months. Let's understand that what is the realistic part, because what happens is that, especially let's say we've been talking about big PPP investments in the port sector. A lot of their business plans are aligned with this, are based on this. So after some time, it does become a credibility issue, and it is more like this, that on a day-to-day basis, if I have a concession agreement with you, and I actually tell you that you have to complete this now, and there's a government target, and now this is put in the national infrastructure pipeline. So they come back and say, but didn't you say DFC comes till this time? Now वो क्या हुआ है, बाई चांस आई थिंक 2-3 बारी जो स्पेशली पहले मंत्री जी थे उन्होंने तो जून 23 कहा था एक्चुअली, तो जून 23 के बाद दिसंबर 23 की बात हुई, अब शायद उसके भी आगे बढ़ने की बात हो रही है. तो थोड़ा सा जस्ट फॉर एवरीबडीज अंडरस्टैंडिंग, यू मे नॉट गिव मी a target here on this platform. That's not the idea. The idea is to for everybody, for all the stakeholders to understand and appreciate the actual reality. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sethi. I was expecting this question because once I heard about these various port connectivities, it was very clear to me that definitely that question will come upon me, and I have to answer that question. If I talk about this connectivity to JNPT, it pertains to the Western Corridor. In the Western Corridor, the total length of the route is from Dadri to JNPT is about 1,500 route kilometer. And of course, we were struggling with the land issues and many contractual issues also. But as of now, we already commissioned from Rewari to Palanpur. And from Palanpur, the connectivity to the various ports have already been done. And from Rewari to Dadri, it is definitely we are planning by March 23. Means that at Dadri, Eastern Corridor is meeting with Indian Railways, it is meeting with the Western Corridor. So right from Kanpur, Bhavpur, Khurja, all this connectivity will be there with the EDFC. And through Dadri, it will come on the Western Corridor. And once it is connected, we will come up to Palanpur without any problem because from Rewari to Palanpur has already been commissioned. Now from Palanpur to Makarpura, that is Makarpura in Vadodara, and from Vadodara to Sachin Vetarna, JNPT. JNPT is the last leg of the connectivity. Up to Vetarna, we are planning that definitely will commission up to Vetarna, maybe by August, September 23. In the last phase, of course, which is the most important thing that is connected to the JNPA, we are struggling a lot with this connectivity, but we are working very hard. Then we will be connecting, of course, not in December 23, but we are trying our best that early 24 we will be able to connect the last leg also. Sir.
Okay, thank you. I think what we can do is we have 4 or 5 speakers here. I'll try to sort of go to all of you. Just have a few lines on what are the challenges and opportunities in the sense of this convergence of vision that we are talking about. हमने सबने थोड़ा टच करने की कोशिश की, लेकिन as we say, कुछ conflict के issues हैं. There are issues of conflict which we sometimes may not say in our regular government functioning, but I think these platforms, at least conceptually, we must discuss those issues. We should try and also say that if we have some ideas in our heads where we could, when we say this $5 trillion economy का vision है, of course we all would like to agree and say हमें 5 trillion, लेकिन the real part is the how part. So when we say landlord model बना रहे हैं, तो landlord model is about efficiency, sir. It's not just I mean जब मैं खुद एक टर्मिनल चला रहा था तो मैं 100 करोड़ का लॉस कर रहा हूँ, अब मैं 500 करोड़ का फायदा करूंगा. That is efficiency. The way the faster this thing we talk about. So everything has to be understood in that perspective. So I would just go around. I mean, we have probably 5 minutes more, but 1 or 2 minutes each. So maybe we start with you, sir.
The biggest challenge that I see is that my vision is perhaps not understood by the people on this panel itself, and their vision is perhaps not as clear to me as it ought to be, because of which many a times we are not able to ensure convergence. To give a small example, very recently I was talking to somebody and there was this question that खूप लोग विस्थापित होणार आहे वाढवण म्हणणार आला तर, and then you try to, this is the first thought that maybe there is a lot of problems that might asymmetry of information, and also things like there would be political issues because people are going to be displaced. However, as they come to understand that no, the displacement is not as large, things would automatically change. And this is where there is this problem of understanding the visions of different agencies, authorities and people, so that we can converge it all together. So that's challenge one. The opportunity that we have is that we have a very low base, and so from here we can only go up. And that is a very, very big opportunity. And I personally feel that that landlord thing, from what my perspective around in that landlord statement was not that what we are doing is not right. It was that the ports of the future which are currently existing in the rest of the world are different from the ports that we are still trying to build. In the sense that there is a lot of things. That's right. No, that's what I was saying. So while we are looking at in MMB also, we only look at how do we actually give the land to somebody. We are not looking at what kind of port will come up there, and what kind of port would we want to come up there. That vision is also lacking because, as you yourself rightly said, that most of us are not exposed to this sector as much as, say, many of us are to roads or to even railway, because railway has been in existence for last 152 years. Roads also have been in place, and lots of our engineers, lots of our planners have been involved with it. Maybe there is a little bit of a lack of information asymmetry, or more of information asymmetry in the port sector as compared to some other sectors.
Sir, from my point of view, shipping is the international trade. We have to align with the international system. Your pertinent question to him, Mr. Swagar, that our ports 1.3 billion tons, only 50% capacity is being used. But how those 50% is being calculated? Once upon a time, 200 meter key length was one berth. Then later it is moved to 300 meter key length was one berth. Now it is 500 meter. And you have a draft only 9 to 10 meter. Now 20 meter draft is needed because global shipping, we have to align to the global shipping. I think India has to evaluate our port capacities in terms of what we have, almost 50% redundant, I would say. Yes, we are having only 19th century, 20th century ports. We have not built 21st century port at all. That's where your vision, building 21st century ports and industrial clusters. Sir, we look at a $5 trillion economy is a true sense, then industrial clusters have to be there as a manufacturing economy. I think these are all the very few things. We have to connect, link to global system and reflect that in here. Yes, if we don't build 24,000 TEUs container vessels to accommodate here, again we will miss the bus. Because last 20 years we are only struggled for a PPP. Now these mega ports in east and west and south in the transshipment, I think few ports have to be here. If not, as sir was saying, A.K. Singh sir, it is true that we will be building 2022 port in 2047. I think that will really happen.
थैंक यू सर. जैसे सेठी साहब ने कल बोला था कि मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट of the economy, in the economy by converging the national master plan. Now just I want to tell you that the DFC is being made with a very high standards. Our tracks are of international standards and our speed is about 75 km per hour average speed, which is 3 times the freight speed which is being run on the Indian Railways. I'm talking about the convergence to the Amritkal Vision 2047, and the traffic which is presently being run on the Indian Railway tracks, it will be transferred to the freight corridor with a 3 times that speed, with about 3 times the freight being loaded as of now. The total load being carried by the Indian Railway train is about 5,000 tons. Now we are planning and we have designed our tracks for carrying a 15,000 ton freight at a higher speed. Recently, we are also working Vande Bharat parcel high-speed train on the freight corridor, because our freight corridor is designed, it can take the speed up to 160 kmph. We are working on this, and maybe Vande Bharat parcel express high-speed train will also run on the dedicated freight corridor. So all these things basically we are converging towards the Vision 2047. And this is what I want to say, sir. Thank you.
Sir, rightly said, sir. We were struggling for the execution of this project. But now PM Gati Shakti is what is the changing all this problem. It is what I'll say, it is an approach or the governance in a revolution in a governance towards seeing the things and execution in the project. Like I'll just give an example, like we have a network planning group under PM Gati Shakti, which discusses all these projects in the planning phase. Like last week we have discussed one railway project which connects, like we know Bhusawal and Manmad is very congested junction because of the passenger trains. So we have discussing on the route which will eliminate and directly connect from Manmad, which will help the freight movement from JNPT to the central Maharashtra. So these freight corridor will eliminate the Bhusawal and Manmad, which anyway is not required for the freight movement. Like the NPG is doing, all the user ministries are sitting together, all these projects are discussed at the planning phase. So even the Bharatmala project has come up, the Gorakhpur-Siliguri Expressway, when the planning group or the logistics division, the TSU, a dedicated team is there, they discuss and see the visibility is there. The project is mapped on the Gati Shakti portal. So we can check the alignment, which districts, how many clusters, industrial clusters are near the vicinity, economic zone, logistics parks, how this will help the connectivity project, where it is passing through the forest, and alignments are changed on the map, on the digital platform. So this is what we are changing, the way of working. And what I'll say, sir, the PM Gati Shakti, this NPG framework, since it is given the technological based platform, it will help us to change. It will bring the agility in the governance process. So PM Gati Shakti is definitely, I'll say, a revolution in the governance. And we can, this will fast track the infrastructure project. It will bring in the efficiency, and decision making will be better. Thank you.
I think, Jayant, last word, or maybe the second last word for you. Can you hear me? Yeah. He's locked out. Okay, fine. So, I think we've had an interesting session. Visions are something where we sometimes struggle with the implementability part, because a lot of people who make the 25 years vision are not there to implement that. So a lot of times it has to be understood that when we are doing these exercises, what happens in the long run. So the reverse lens, the long lens, and the wide lens, which basically means that you have to flip it and understand what is on the other side, or how it will matter at 25 years, when we say, okay, so right now the data tells me that the vessel size increased in 10 years by this much times. It may or may not replicate itself, but you will have to have some scenario analysis to deal with those situations, rather than have a very static solution, because long-term visions cannot be static. They have to have an element of dynamism, an element of resilience. That is something we all need to. We had tried to focus on the convergence part, and I think the most important story of today is that Gati Shakti, in its right earnestness, uses technology, uses data management and analytics to achieve this goal. And I think this kind of technology is agnostic. It actually is something which you cannot tamper with. It does not deal with informal institutions that we all the time are troubled with. So these are those things which this tries to take care of, and I think it definitely is a good starting point for making this happen. I thank all the participants for being here and making a very good contribution to this session. Thank you very much. We'll just request you to wait here, because I think we have some mementos. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Can we have a huge round of applause for the first panel discussion of day 2? What an enriching session. May I request Shri Sanjay Sethi ji to present mementos to our esteemed panelists. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off with Shri A.K. Singh ji, and going ahead to Shri Anarasu Karunation ji. Can you have a huge round of applause for Shri Praveen Kumar ji? And a big round of applause for Shri Sagar Karu ji. May I also request Shri Unmesh Sharad Wagh ji to join us to present a memento to sir. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye, everybody. May I request for a quick photo op with the entire team of panelists and our convener and Shri Unmesh Sharad Wagh ji. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, and a big thank you to our entire team. I know everybody's looking forward to the second panel discussion of the day, but we're going to quickly take a 10-minute break for tea and coffee, recharge yourself, and join us for the second panel discussion. Thank you so much. Just a humble request. It's going to be a quick 5 to 7 minutes break. So please help yourself with tea and coffee, and we are going to be back in the next 5 to 7 minutes, please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to join back at the seats? We are about to start the next panel discussion of day 2. We are just about to start the second panel discussion of the day. May I request our esteemed guests to join us back to the seats. All right, with this, let's proceed to our next panel discussion, which is outcome and output of Gati Shakti initiatives. They say never dream for success, but you've got to work for it. Pragati ki gati, Bharat ki shakti. The only thing that defeats hard luck is hard work and speed. So for our panel discussion on outcome and output of Gati Shakti initiatives, may I invite firstly our convener, Shri Jagannarayanan P. from CRISIL. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He's been with us even on day 1. He's a director and practice lead, transport, logistics and mobility at CRISIL. A gentleman with more than 17 plus years of experience in consulting across business strategy, corporate and competitive strategy, and traveled across the globe from Middle East to Asia Pacific. We have his presence on stage. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. With this, it's time to welcome our panelists on stage. Let me start off with Shri Shashi Kiran Shetty ji. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye inke liye. Well, who doesn't know him? He has been the founder and chairman of All Cargo Group, a more than 2.5 billion USD global logistics powerhouse in 180 countries and across India. Let's have a huge round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to welcome our next panelist, Shri A.S. Ranga Nayak ji. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause. He's the joint CEO for Maharashtra, MI, DC, Mumbai and Government of Maharashtra. In his service, he has had several senior posts. He has worked as Sub-Divisional Magistrate Ahmednagar, Chief Executive Officer Nandurbar, Collector Jalna and Gadchiroli. He's also been the Commissioner for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. He currently holds the position of Joint CEO Admin in MIDC, where he handles IT, marketing and special projects such as Multimodal Logistics Park, PM Gati Shakti and lots more. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, everybody. Our next panelist is Shri Girish Agrawal ji, Managing Director, APM Terminals Mumbai. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause. He started his journey with engineering and completed his MBA from IIM Bangalore and has worked in Unilever, Ariba, Genpact and Maersk Group for past 10 years in various senior management roles. We have his presence at the dais. A big round of applause for Shri Girish Agrawal ji. And may I also request Shri Sagar Kaduji, Director, MOCI, to join us back on stage for this panel discussion. I pass on the baton to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you all out here. Really thankful for taking out the time and being here. As the overall subject is about output and outcome of the whole plan part which is there, I think in a way the outcome is is put in carved in stone, for a change, saying that you need to reduce the logistics cost in the broader scheme of things, saying that from 14% to what is there to global standards, probably 8% or 9%. How that 14% has come, I know it could be debatable, but the idea is to make a step change, bring it from 14 to 8%. And we have debated from yesterday to today, what are the different aspects that from the government side, what is being taken up. I think the focus of today's, or just this panel's discussion is, from the private sector, what is it actually needed and what needs to be done more. For that, I think there's no better person than to get you, Mr. Shetty, first off the block in understanding what are the real inputs and hence the output that you would want from this whole part of it. It's a large, they don't want to say that this is a scheme, but a large movement which is happening, spanning across multiple years probably. But then what is it that the end consumer, what is it they would want to see from part of it? And then I'll come back to you, Girish, I know from a customer and customer experience perspective as a follow-on to you. Yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to compliment the JNPT authority, JNPA, for hosting this amazing conference, bringing all the stakeholders together. And also, I must really feel extremely proud for the Government of India, being the first anniversary of launching what is called as Gati Shakti, which is now in the lip of every business person connected to the industry, etc. I think there are a few things, comments I would like to make. First of all, Gati Shakti is about, one, obviously the ease of doing business. Eventually, ease of doing business should also connect to ease of better living for the people. And one of the most important things when we asked the questions about what is one of the biggest challenge is commuting, is going from one place to another place as an individual and as also the merchandise. Whether it is movement through the road or rail or by water, we have multiple challenges around that. So that is what I think has contributed for the entire logistic cost in the country, comparable to many of the developed economies. I think, like you said, 14% is maybe slightly debatable. What's most important is there is definitely a lot of room for improvement. And we're talking about lakhs of crores of rupees, which the government can save, and that can be put into use for better living, bringing poverty, more people out of the poverty line, etc., leading to better living standards for all Indians. I think that is where the larger vision and larger picture of Gati Shakti need to be thinking about. I'm sure that's the ultimate vision of the government. So as a business or as an industry, what do we expect from the government? Obviously, everybody knows about it. The fact of the matter is that government gives more sustainable policy making and implementation of the policy so that the business gets the predictability for making investment. And when you get the predictability, that is what every multinational company or every Indian enterprise would like to invest. We all know there is no dearth of money that is required for making Gati Shakti or any government scheme in the area of business successful. What the need of the business is, end of the day, every shareholder, like all of us, we expect a reasonable return on equity, right? And for anybody to have reasonable equity, as being an attractive destination to invest, there need to be a predictability. And with the minimum hassles. People do not expect 40%, 50% return. People are happy with even 8-10% return on an infrastructure project, as all of us know. And it can go up to 20% return in some of the other businesses that factories or services business or whatever that you invest your money on. So it's a reasonable expectation from a person who's doing the investment. And if that doesn't work well, since it's not a very high margin business, if there are changes in policies, or there are delay in implementation, or there is too much of a hassle to get things going, that is where the people start to believe that this is not an attractive business, or attractive destination, or attractive state, or attractive port, or a destination, whatever we are talking about. So I think the business outcome, if you ask me, I think one, definitely the ease of doing business index should go low, and competitiveness should increase. That is the other most important thing, right? India today, as all of us know, stands tall in the global markets. The tremendous amount of goodwill that has been built in the last 10 years, 20 years of the liberalization that India has undertaken, which is now accelerated a lot. And I think we are so happy and proud that we have a stable government, a very decisive leader who has visions like this. And I think this is really the time for our country to really capitalize. By putting some of the differences and using technology, differences, when I say differences aside, converge what we heard about earlier from the earlier speakers. Somehow we'll have to find ways to converge various infrastructure projects or various ideas under Gati Shakti, what we have, and come and work as one unit to make things happen faster. I know there is no perfection anywhere. We can't expect things to radically change, but I think if you can make significant improvement to meet with the global expectations out of India, with all these ambitious policy announcements and the implementation of those policies being pursued by the central governments and followed by the state governments, if this continues on an ongoing basis, where the most important machinery of the governance is our bureaucracy. Politicians will come and go, but the bureaucracy is always there, right? So bureaucracy has improved also significantly over the years, and I think if that can also improve, Gati Shakti will be a much greater outcome. My appeal to the bureaucracy is please spread this word across all your colleagues to make Gati Shakti a great place, a great policy initiative of Government of India, and which is not only for Government of India, it's for all the states and all the districts of the country. So that's my opening remark.
Excellent. And I think you've set the context as well very nicely, saying that predictability, faster execution, getting everybody on the same page, all of that. I think that's the overall intention as well, and good to see from a private sector that you're looking at as one of the key outcomes which is there. Girish, we can go a bit deeper and specific in context of how the implementation part of it, right? And how is it even happening today? I think that's the larger part. So it should not be a vision saying that, and hence it will happen. I always think that we say we are on the growth path of development. I've never seen that we never say that we are getting into develop. So it's always at 20 years saying we are on the growth path of development. That should not be the case out here as well. So specifically in that context, what do you see from the terminal part of it? And specifically, while I ask the importance of this, and what Sir mentioned, that we are now in the cusp, and we've talked about this 5 trillion couple of times in the morning. We need to now serve the global, right? We don't need to be serving only the India part of it. And the aspirations is very clearly seen by multiple light industrial manufacturing companies, others as well, that we want to go. An interesting data point, and then tie it up to this part of it. We are exporting steel, right? While about 12% and we are the second largest producer of steel, and still exporting 12% of it outside of it. And hence the aspirations are far higher of the industries today. They want to grow. And port is the gateway for all of these aspirations. And that's where your critical part comes in, of how do you then satisfy that aspiration? What are the investments which are being made today to bring down that logistics cost, make it more competitive in the whole larger part of it, and specifically in where you are at JNPA and this part of this country, how is all of this tying up?
Long question, but I'll try to focus and synthesize my perspective on Gati Shakti and the outcomes that I see. Two things really excite me the most. One is infrastructure development, and this is not something that will happen. It is happening in JNPA. I see this day in and day out. Earlier, typical infrastructure projects were sequential projects. You would do one thing, then do the second. So you'll build a port, then build the roads, then build the parking. Today, that's not the case. We are building a port which is 10 million TEUs, but before it is ready, the entire infrastructure of road is ready in and around the port. So you can come and see that happening. Allied services like parking, a world-class parking facility is ready. We are ready for the 10 million TEUs. Rail, unfortunately, we saw a delayed DFC arrival in the port, but it's working extremely fast within the port premises. So we're getting ready for the 10 million TEUs, and it's not something that we're just talking. It's happening in front of our eyes. So I'm extremely positive and excited about the infrastructure improvement by bringing in multiple facets of the government to really reduce the logistics costs, right? Genuinely reduce the logistics costs. That's one thing. The second thing that excites me the most is the technology part, which is around the unified platform, integrated logistics platform that is being built. We already within the port premises use PCS. We know the kind of information that is being passed on, and the information that is passed on can be used for a wide variety of things which we are not using today. But the opportunity exists. Just as an example, NLDS today connects all our containers through RFID. So that information about where a container is available today for several months, years. What it can do now is move to predictive analytics, right? You were talking about predictive analytics. So imagine the power that a terminal operator like me gets when I get to know proactively from the NLDS database that this is the number of containers that will hit my gates today. Imagine the Thane traffic leadership getting to know proactively when are the number of containers hitting them in the Thane area. And they can then proactively plan. Just one thing. So imagine, and this is just the NLDS database. Imagine everything coming together, terabytes of data that we generate within our terminals and ports, all coming together, the amount of debottlenecking that this can do. So very, very excited about that. Another example is backhaul, rails. Today, I think, we handle about 120 trains a week in our port. I would argue the efficiency is about 70–80%. So there's capacity available on the backhaul. I today within my terminal is actually using that, not using that backhaul available information, but I'm placing extra rakes to vacate empty repositioning. So shipping lines are doing empty repositioning through my terminal. But imagine if this information is available to shipping lines online, that on the 120 trains or rakes that go out of my port every week, this is the capacity available. Imagine what they can do with that information. So a lot of opportunities that I see and I'm excited about as I move forward from a customer perspective that Gati Shakti solves. And it's not something that is far away. I see it happening in front of my eyes today.
Great. Happy to note that part of the Gati Shakti is getting implemented as we speak, and that's happening at JNPA as you put it across. I'll get in, Mr. Nayak into this conversation in terms of Shetty Saab batayenge on bureaucracy, getting all of them aligned, right? And somewhere you have donning that hat, and from the state perspective, right? From the central to state collaboration, how is that happening? And I think that's a very important aspect because at the end of the day, it is not a vision of at the central level. It needs to get percolated down. And how are you making that happen at the ground level? And the users of your, from an MIDC perspective, how are they seeing this change coming across? And where are we? I know it's initial stage, probably first year, but going forward, what are the initiatives which is being taken up to do that happen?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, let me clear one thing that, PM Gati Shakti is not just a scheme or a vision which is like, catering only to the logistics part of the, the sector. Gati Shakti is basically something much more beyond, logistics. This future, it would be also like, including how do you be planning your educational, institutions, hospitals, social infrastructure, okay? So beyond this, the idea of Gati Shakti perhaps has come from the logistics point of view, but moving ahead, this will also be including, social, sectors also. With regards to the implementation of Gati Shakti, as you all know, the nodal agency is like, DPIT from, Government of India. And in Maharashtra, we coordinate the, entire implementation of this Gati Shakti, the Industries Department. At the state level, we have like, come up with 3, committees, which is like, empowered group of secretaries headed by Honorable CS. This committee is like, empowered to like, approve projects under Gati Shakti and also oversee implementation of Gati Shakti in the state. The next level below that is the network planning group, which is headed by the Principal Secretary Industries. And the third is the technical support unit, which is headed by COMIDC. So basically, for us to like, get everything on to Gati Shakti, the basic thing is that we need to map all the data layers. Data layers in the sense, right from, anything under the sun, you can like, simply put it that way. All the, boundaries, like, state, district, village, urban areas, wards, okay, that is one. Secondly, you are, infra related to roads, railway, port, oil pipeline, gas pipeline, okay, airports, bus shelters, bus terminals, railway stations. You see any infra on, ground, it would be like, put on that. Expectation is that, when you are coming to like, plan a project, that should be done on the system itself, where all the data which is necessary to plan is already existing on the system. Okay, say from place A to B, we want to like, lay a railway lane. You select the, stretch and select the layers which you need to like, verify. Say I can select, say, wildlife park, oil pipeline, gas pipeline, road, culvert, rivers. So the alignment and the gaps and the issues which probably may come up, that are pre-generated. And you can like, directly take a call on it. Else the traditional system of going onto the ground and doing a field survey, and you miss something that, you don't know that this, particular stretch of 2 kilometers, say that comes in a, wildlife park, which is like, you are not, allowed to go in. So these things could be avoided. Project planning will be faster and more precise. And also that you can like, make an estimate of the cost of the project which you are going to do. The third part is all type of, permissions or NOCs which are like, expected from any department are also getting like, onto the Gati Shakti portal. So this is a platform where you plan your project, you give permissions to this project, and you start, implementing and monitoring also. Also for infra and also for social sectors. So this is how like, we are doing. We regularly have a meeting of all these committees. So initially we have been like, given a target of say like, 28 data layers, which are like, specified. So of that, we are more than, 20, this thing. So we are on track on, doing this thing. This is a very ambitious thing. It will take time, but, surely we will be doing this thing.
Yeah. On MIDC side, what are the aspects, you talked about these layers are part of it. How is this, at least, in the next, let's say 2 years, 3 years, how do you see this getting implemented? What is the rollout that you are envisaging of having this done? Yeah.
With regards to MIDC, there are 2 issues which I would like to point out. One is all the industrial areas. Almost we have 300 industrial areas of MIDC across the state. Okay. All these industrial areas to the extent of plot boundaries, okay, that has been mapped on GIS and that has already been shared with, Gati Shakti. Okay. So if I need to plan something or some, agency plans an infra project. So if they want to, have a corridor between 2 industrial areas, okay, they may plan it in such a way that, on the portal itself, you can identify probable location of a new industrial park. Say we are, updating the data with regards to Samruddhi Mahamarg, the expressway connecting Nagpur and Mumbai. And I feel I need to have a logistic park, wherever the interchanges are, there. So I can plan it. So I can make an, projection as to how much of area is available, whether it is, seasonally irrigated, that is, land use. So these things, will help us to plan.
Understood. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
this is also like, the database is linked with the India Industrial Land Bank. This is also an initiative of the GOI. Any investor who has to who is willing to invest in MIDCs, so he can go to the portal and see the plot, location and also the plot status. Vacant plots or, allotted. If it is vacant, you get a link and then you can directly apply from there. This is what is being, envisaged.
Yeah, no, I think, from an industry's perspective, when we do consulting jobs, they always ask, where is the land, right? Is it available? Is it unencumbered? Do you need to go and procure it? Or what will be the kind of, utilities that can come up? All of this, if somebody is going to be putting in across 4,000, 5,000 crores, these would be top of the mind questions which would be there, and these kind of information at least will set that part away, that yes, these are available and this is how it is going to pan out. So thanks for that. And then we dwell more into the logistics part, because from the theme part of it is multimodal maritime part of it, so that's why we on to the logistics side. Getting Sagar into the conversation, so as part of the focus on the shipping parts of it, right, and from the DPIIT, what is the focus that you are looking at? What is the outcome that you would want at the end of the day? Specifically, if not in specific on numbers perspective, but directionally, where do you think that this should be moving across to?
Right. When we say a PM Gati Shakti, it has two arms. One is the infrastructure creation, which is we call the National Master Portal, and second is the process part. What we are discussing in the logistics policy, while the infrastructure is equally important, the process part is equally important, which we are trying to address in the logistics policy, which is again under the PM Gati Shakti framework. So in logistics policy, the aim is towards the technology-driven ecosystem, more user interface, the commodity-based logistics plans, we are working on it, multimodal logistics park again, then ULIP, as we are aware, already discussed yesterday. And again, we have developed one portal as a e-logs. It's called Ease of Logistics Services. That it is a digital portal. The user IDs and the passwords are created and already given to all the logistics industry association across India. And that portal is to share the ideas of the industry, what is needs to be done. If some bottlenecks is there, maybe from the documentation side, maybe from the custom sides, or some requirement is, support is required from any ministry, that the industry can directly send the request to the ministry through logistics division, as we are holding that portal, and we are analyzing these issues. And every month these issues will be discussed in the forum. We are creating an institutional mechanism with all these ministries will be sitting together and discussing these issues. So maybe some custom requirement or the documentation part is there, which is somewhere is, as the industry thought, is coming into as a hindrance. The committee will discuss these issues and the decision will be taken in the meetings itself. That committee will be empowered. Of course, the law and act will be, needs to be changed if something required, but that committee will discuss. And not only the committee, we are working on the advisory committee also, which will be a part of the industry again. Sometimes maybe the government officers or the authorities may not be equally compatible to discuss this problem, or which needs more brainstorming. So government is open to discuss with the industry stakeholders, or actually the changes which has been supported or asked by some of the industry association is really required, or what is the impact on the other services. So as we know, the government authorities, it's everything is linked to the some or the other ministries. So when we take any decision, we have to see how it will impact adversely in the other disease. So just to address the issues raised by sir in the policy thing, so just to ensure the stakeholders, now the Gati Shakti approach itself is not to work in the silos. Now the central government and the state governments are working together. Like even what we mentioned in the NPG, the state government officers, then authorities, the field officer who is working into the Nasik or maybe the Indore on the Manmad, he is coming to the Ministry of Commerce and he is giving the presentation and he is asking, sir, यहाँ ये support चाहिए हमें, MOPA से ये clearance चाहिए, state से ये support चाहिए, land acquisition से problem है. All these things are documented, and it's not only documented, Every month the report is going to the PMO, CAPSEC is reviewing, EGOS is the apex body who is overseeing all the mechanism. So any issues are there is being monitored. Now the framework has started for the new project. Of course, there were earlier projects which are already in execution. Of course, we know some difficulties there. But now at least the government का ये प्रयास है कि जो new projects करने हैं, उसको just in time जो approach बोलते हैं, उसको जो planning stage पे ही उसको correct किया जाए. Maybe we have a fantastic example we have discussed, yesterday also we have discussed, that one project Ambaji में, it was crossing 15 kilometers to the forest area. अभी DPR बन जाता है, बाद में 6 महीने बाद पता चलता है, अरे यहाँ पे forest clearance, और 2 साल वो project वहीं पे अटक जाता है. Now हमने वहीं पे the committee took the decision on the portal and उसका it was asked to the जो भी software planner है, इसको हम कहीं पे change कर सकते हैं. तो it was just a diversion of the 30 kilometers. But जो 2 years का जो execution delays था और maybe हो सकता है 2 साल के बाद वो project would have been scrapped. But that जो problem था वहीं पे identify होगा, it has been corrected. Similarly, when we are planning, last month we have discussed one project, Indore to Manmad, railway wala. Just to give how we are working, basically, यहीं पे कि government policies, how the governance is changing and working. Like the corporates, okay, हम target fix करते हैं, we break down, sir has just said. So हम छोटे-छोटे targets भी हम devise कर रहे हैं. We have a target for 2025, we have a target for 2030. Now governments also target. और target का monitoring is important. जो मनमाड़ वाला project का, just to give the idea, तो जब वो प्रोजेक्ट मैप किया है तो प्रोजेक्ट बताता है, वहीं पे हमको स्क्रीन पे मिल जाता है कि ओके इसका 200 किलोमीटर का लेंथ मध्य प्रदेश में ये हो रहा है, 350 किलोमीटर का पार्ट है महाराष्ट्र में है. महाराष्ट्र गवर्नमेंट से क्या क्या अप्रूवल्स लगेंगे, द सिस्टम इज ओनली शोइंग. अगर वो फॉरेस्ट से जा रहा है तो क्या, अगर रिवर्स है तो कहाँ कहाँ पे रिवर ब्रिज बनाने हैं, अगर रेलवे है यूटिलिटीज शिफ्ट करना है, अगर ट्रांसमिशन लाइन है तो सिस्टम इज ओनली सेइंग कि यहाँ पे ये लेयर्स है, यहाँ पे हाई ट्रांसमिशन लाइन जा रही है और 15 ट्रांसमिशन लाइन शिफ्ट करनी पड़ेगी, या जो रिवर्स है इतने ब्रिजेस लगेंगे, या रेलवे लाइन अगर है तो रोड कहाँ पे, रोड का इंटरसेक्शन है, द नेशनल हाईवे, स्टेट हाईवेज, ऑल दीज थिंग्स, द विजिबिलिटीज. सो दिस विजिबिलिटी इज गिविंग द फास्टर डिसीजन मेकिंग. Again, sir is already, last 2 months we are discussing the port connectivity plan for the all over the India. Sir itself, we have 8 committees, all the major ports, and sir is the chairman for the Maharashtra committee. So total in 2 months we done the exercise finding the critical infrastructure gaps. For the ports we have found total 298 connectivity projects across the 87 ports. Out of that 197 is the Sagarmala projects we have identified. 107 is the infrastructure. We have identified the committees involved, the persons from the MORTH, railway, the field officers of the railways. The comprehensive study was taken care, and then we have categorized the project, its critical projects, important projects, and the very important and important projects. The timeline is also been defined. March 23 हमें कितने projects करने हैं, 22 project है, by 24 15 projects are there, by 26 another 16. So the timeline is defined and the report is going. When we were discussing yesterday, the meeting was going in the logistics division for the monthly monitoring of this and how the progress is being with the coordination of the MOPSW and the railway, कि इसका एक every month कि इस पे क्या progress है. So it's not only the planning करके छोड़ दिया, the NPG is reviewing these projects and monitoring is been done to the topmost level. And just to say that, when we are discussing the outcome and output, so output, at least we have one small video on the Gati Shakti, what we have done in last year, and maybe it will give some ideas so how we are progressing. Just to ensure on the government is there, of course state and central government, but the government is, I understand the private stakeholders are equally important. While we can create the infrastructures, but ultimately the investment has to be done. So private sector, and again, this infrastructure is basically for providing the seamless connectivity, which is the important part of the logistics ecosystem. Please play the video.
प्रोजेक्ट, प्लानिंग और उसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के रास्ते का दूर हो हर अवरोध और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट का कार्य देश भर में हो अभूतपूर्व गति से। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के इस विजन को साकार करने के उद्देश्य से 13 अक्टूबर 2021 को शुरू हुई थी पीएम गति शक्ति। इसमें नेशन एज अ होल फिलॉसफी को अपनाया और विभिन्न मंत्रालयों और राज्यों ने साइलोस को छोड़कर इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच के साथ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स के मिनिमल डिस्ट्रप्शन और टाइम बाउंड इंप्लीमेंटेशन को किया सुनिश्चित। ये वर्ल्ड क्लास तकनीक से लैस GIS सपोर्टेड है। पीएम गति शक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान NMP ने डेटा ड्रिवन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्लानिंग और प्रोजेक्ट्स के फास्ट ट्रैक इंप्लीमेंटेशन के लिए 12 महीने के भीतर ही 1800 से अधिक डेटा लेयर्स जैसे कि ट्रंक लॉजिस्टिक्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, यूटिलिटी नेटवर्क्स और फॉरेस्ट आदि को किया है मैप्ड। पिछले 8 वर्षों में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट ने भरी है ऊंची उड़ान। 2014 की अपेक्षा भारत में कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर 4 गुना बढ़कर 1.75 लाख करोड़ से वर्तमान में 7.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए हो गया है। 2014-15 में भारत में 91,287 किलोमीटर राष्ट्रीय राजमार्ग थे, जो 2021-22 में बढ़कर 1,33,608 किलोमीटर हो गए हैं। पिछले एक साल में देश में राष्ट्रीय राजमार्ग में 7,582 किलोमीटर जोड़ा गया है, जिससे अब इसकी कुल लंबाई 1,41,190 किलोमीटर हो गई है। 2014-15 में रेलवे द्वारा 1,053 मिलियन टन कार्गो हैंडल किया गया था, जो 2020-21 में बढ़कर 1,210 मिलियन टन हो गया। हालांकि पिछले एक वर्ष में ये 200 मिलियन टन बढ़कर 1,418 मिलियन टन हो गया है। वर्ष 2014-15 में OFC नेटवर्क से जुड़ी कुल ग्राम पंचायतों की संख्या केवल 60 थी, जो वर्तमान में बढ़कर 1,58,286 हो गई है। इसी तरह बिजली ट्रांसमिशन नेटवर्क 2014-15 में जहां 3,02,550 सर्किट किलोमीटर्स थी, वो वर्तमान में बढ़कर 4,54,540 सर्किट किलोमीटर्स हो गई है। पीएम गति शक्ति के अंतर्गत लॉजिस्टिक्स एफिशिएंसी में सुधार के लिए 197 इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर गैप प्रोजेक्ट्स की पहचान की है। पीएम गति शक्ति के अंतर्गत प्रोजेक्ट इंप्लीमेंटेशन के टाइमली कंप्लीशन पर अभूतपूर्व ध्यान दिया गया है। देश भर में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट इंप्लीमेंटेशन में तेजी लाने के लिए 1,300 से अधिक इंटर मिनिस्टीरियल मुद्दों जैसे लैंड एक्विजिशन, फॉरेस्ट क्लियरेंसेस और ROWs का समाधान किया गया है। पीएम गति शक्ति के तहत प्रोजेक्ट प्लानिंग और सिंक्रोनाइज्ड इंप्लीमेंटेशन के लिए केंद्रीय मंत्रालय एवं राज्य सरकारों की समान रूप से भागीदारी रही है। सभी 36 राज्यों, केंद्र शासित प्रदेशों ने इसके तहत आवश्यक इंस्टीट्यूशनल फ्रेमवर्क का गठन किया है। राज्यों द्वारा लॉजिस्टिक्स पर अत्यधिक फोकस दिया जा रहा है। 13 राज्यों ने अपनी स्टेट लॉजिस्टिक्स पॉलिसी को अधिसूचित कर दिया है, जबकि 16 राज्य लॉजिस्टिक्स के महत्व पर जोर देते हुए अपनी लॉजिस्टिक्स पॉलिसी की ड्राफ्टिंग के एडवांस स्टेज में हैं। कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म को बढ़ाते हुए स्टेट लेवल लॉजिस्टिक्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर विकास के लिए स्पेशल सेंट्रल असिस्टेंस का प्रावधान किया गया है। पीएम गति शक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान और नेशनल लॉजिस्टिक्स पॉलिसी के द्वारा देश में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के काम में और गति और शक्ति आई है, जिससे हम अपनी लॉजिस्टिक्स कॉस्ट को कम करके इसे विश्व स्तर पर पहुंचा पाएंगे। हमारी लॉजिस्टिक्स परफॉर्मेंस रैंकिंग भी विश्व के 25 प्रगतिशील देशों में सम्मिलित हो जाएगी। इससे हमारी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस बढ़ेगी।
Hello. Yeah. So I think from an outcome, this was very good. From an outcome, I think the larger part we talked about yesterday as well. There's a 20% cost escalation in all the projects which is happening, which is leading to about close to 4 lakh crore as additional, expenditure, which the government is undertaking, and that's probably if you're able to bring that down as an outcome, will be a great point. And second is in terms of the overall time of it also, which is close to about 3.5 years overrun in terms of the time part of it, and if we are able to bring that down, that will be an additional saving as well. I think those are some of the larger part of it. Girish, getting into the conversation specific in terms of the customer, right? How does this, at the end of the day, the cost and the time part of it is one, but how is the customer is going to get, and what is the experience? How can this be elevated significantly going forward, and what are you doing currently in terms of, you talked about the whole technology development and all of that, and what's happening at your terminal, and how can that be taken up by others as well in improving the customer experience part of it?
So from our perspective, there are two key elements that we are working on, and that's our larger game plan for the coming years. One is to be radically better for our customer experience through port hours saved. We have one of the most productive, if not the most productive terminal, gateway terminal in the country. But the focus that we are now going is to be radically better than where we are today. So we want to do a 30% reduction in our port hour stay for our customers. How do we achieve that from where we are today? One is technology. And this is something that we are very, very focused on. Asset digitization, which is a digital twin of all our assets and equipments, is already online for us. What it really does is at any point in time tells us how to manage our resources better. So if there is a heavy hook on our berth, we are able to deploy our resources to ensure that that heavy hook is minimized, and hence the port stays are, for our customers are reduced. As we keep moving forward, what it will do really is to give me predictive maintenance schedules. I would, through various sensors and devices, get to understand which equipment needs preventive maintenance when. Today, I do 60% preventive maintenance, 40% corrective maintenance. I want to reduce that corrective maintenance time to 20%, which really means that my equipments are available more for our customers. So that's what we are really focused on. The other element is prime route, which is actually looking at how my trucks are deployed within the terminal. How can I do a more, from a passive to more active management of my equipment or trucks? And hence, I'm able to deploy them where there is more need than they are currently deployed. And hence, again, something that improves my productivity, and hence the port hour stays. What we have already done is vessel idle time reduction. This is essentially the vessel as it comes into, as it berths, but before it starts work, and as it finishes its work, but takes at times to depart. So we were at about 117 minutes earlier with close collaboration with JNPA Marine. That's come down to 90 minutes already. So almost 25% reduction. We can, I believe, go down more, and that can be replicated again across the industry. So technology, vessel idle time, what can be done more is what we are trying to do is infrastructure upgrade. We are doing our upgrade of infrastructure over a period of time that will again deliver significant benefits, about 3 to 5% productivity enhancements. I think from a Gati Shakti perspective, what I would say is there's an opportunity to bring in, for example, environmental clearances. They can be hastened through this whole program. The process can improve. It takes some more time today, but how can we improve that to enable that approvals faster? So as a case in point, there are other elements. Customs has done a phenomenal job so far, but there's still more to go. We have e-seals only for factory stuff. If that e-seal is done for all the CFS stuffed cargo as well, what it means is the movement of those containers will be almost completely paperless stroke faster at my gates. That is a strong enabler. Today, the import inward clearances that come from customs takes almost 4 hours, and hence, even if I discharge my cargo, I can't take it out of my yard till the time customs gives my clearance. So there's an opportunity there. So multiple process improvements within the industry will enable us to further improve our port hour stays. But technology, I think, is going to be a game changer and will genuinely deliver radical improvement at our ports. And that's what we are focused on. The other area, sorry.
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
The other area is essentially decarbonization. We are very, very focused from now till the next 3 years to decarbonize our supply chain, our processes. And that's another area that I think Gati Shakti can help. There are multiple, let's say regulatory frameworks within the Ministry of Power. How do we understand that better, and how do we ensure that we are able to tap onto the renewables grid to ensure that we are able to at least reduce 50% of our carbon emissions. We're working with some of the leading global corporates like Siemens and Schneider to work on various initiatives, but there's much more that can be done. And again, the process improvement part that you talked about will really enable us to achieve those objectives. And that's by far the two key perspectives that I see from a customer angle, is to give them the right customer experience or improved customer experience.
Excellent, great. So one point which you talked about, maybe we'll take it up later, is I think also from a private sector, what can you contribute? I know the whole session is about what is your expectation, but I think this whole decarbonization and some of the best practices can be fed back into this whole portal for a larger good, right? Saying how this was being able to do it part. And in the why part, and getting Mr. Shetty into the conversation, in your opening remark, you talked about return on equity, cost of capital. So truly so, because it's your money that you're putting it across, and you would want these to be, and your shareholders measure you on these parts of it. And why this is important, I'll just put it in context. If we were to roll this back about, say, 2021, 22, right? Sorry, 2011, 2012, the broad split of capex expenditure was close to about, central government was doing about 35-40%, state government of about 30%, lesser than the central government. Private capital was close to about 30% and plus. What has happened in this decade from now, the private capital has completely vanished from the table. Now it is about close to only 15%. So there is a significant capex which is being, in a way, if I can use a word, burdened at the state government and the central government. Central government is doing about 40-45% now. The state government is equally doing about 40% plus. So huge expenditure at individual state government is happening, all of this. And probably one what they all say is because of the fingers being burnt in 2011, 2010, that I have wanted to commit my capital, put it across. It never went through a lot of these NPAs and all of that. So the point I'm saying is, out here, one of that was the implementation aspect, which really put them off, that I was able to wanting to commit capital, put it across, put my money also, but it all turned NPAs, putting it loosely in that context. So from your expectation, right, so now if you're going to be putting in this money and to take it forward, are you geared up to do that now, giving you that confidence, yes, this can be something that part of it? And what is your expectation that from you talked a wide range from 10% to 20%, I'm sure, but any listed company will be looking at anything more than 15%, at least on an ROE perspective, as a hurdle rate. And how do you then take that forward? Yeah.
To come to that point a little later, I agree completely with the Girish's presentation about the data, right? And we all know that data is a new oil, and there is so much we can do with data for improving our business, our investments, coming up with a strategy, getting with ULIP, for example, there can be so much of data that if the government is able to provide to the private sector for their decision making, without obviously taking away privacy of any individual companies or organizations, but there will be still so much of data that probably in the future that can be shared with the private sector and any other sector, social sector, wherever, whatever and whenever that is required. And also, I think, through this program, I think we can also collect a lot of international data, which may be out there available for the Indian companies or Indian government and the social sector to do investments, right? And you can learn a lot from the experience of various countries if you have that real data, right? So that I just wanted to make that one point.
Very important point. This is real-time data. So tomorrow, if you're going to making a planning part of it, you can actually say, yes, this is within a 5% part of it. This is the time it will take to complete, and hence estimate your cost. All of that will be a lot more with analytics on hand, and it could be split across into region as well. If you were to do it in the southern side, then this is what it would be there. If it's in the west, it's be here. In the east part of it, this is the kind of part which will be there.
Right.
Terrain, multiple parts, taking it, rather than just saying it will take between 3 to 5 years to complete. Hey, come on, there's a large variation. Now you have data to substantiate what is. I think a very valid point that you make.
Thank you. So to answer your question about specifically the private sector, now I think in the last decade, while all these things happened, I think also a tremendous improvement has happened also in the overall governance of the corporate sector. So now there is greater accountability for the funds that have been taken from the banks, or any payment commitment that has been done which is not honored. You have an NCLT route for a lot of things. So the overall confidence of the business also improved in the last decade with the experience and with the regulations that came to manage. For example, real estate project, for example, right? There's a tremendous change that we all have seen. So we have learned a lot, implemented a lot. I'm sure there's a lot more can be implemented to overcome that. And with that, obviously, talking specifically about all cargo, in this decade in India, we have built close to about 5 million square feet of grade A warehouses, right? And these are really international standard. We built 2 parks with 100 acres, 2 million square feet. On the best companies are our lessees today: Amazon, Flipkart, Decathlon, and companies like that, Nestle, and people like that. So these things were not available. As we built it, they were already booked. That was the scenario. So we fortunately had the land bank, and very quickly we could execute the project. So I think the confidence of the private sector is definitely changing, and I think as the economy grows, and India is now the fastest growing economy in the world, more investments are likely to come into India. And I think the confidence of the Indian private sector is definitely growing by the day. As I interact with many of the industrialists and many of the business houses, that confidence is definitely emerging a lot.
Thank you. And one of it, we talked about warehouse part of it, and just to extend that in terms of the multimodal logistics park, which is happening, and one of the topic out here is on the multimodal maritime part. What's happening in Maharashtra on MIDC, and how is that shaping up, and how can that help in the overall, bringing down the whole logistics cost of that?
Okay. So I'll answer this in 2 parts. One, with regards to the multimodal logistic parks that are being come up, in the state of Maharashtra, in coordination with GOI. So we have this NHLML, so National Highways Logistics Management Limited. So they are the agency which is mandated to come up with these MMLPs. Basically, the model is that the corporation or the state government will, provide the land, okay. Connectivity providing agencies like RVNL, Railways, the shipping ministry, and then the National Highways Authority. So all these 4 players would come together, and wherever there is a issue of air connectivity, the Airports Authority of India or the civil aviation will come in. So the proposal is that you identify such a land which caters to the manufacturing or the industrial parks which are located in the state. Also with regards to the agri produce. So to an extent, highway connectivity is to be given. The National Highway Authorities will put in money with regards to the ports, the shipping ministry, and with regards to air connectivity, the civil aviation department. So this is how we have identified 5 MMLPs in the state of Maharashtra, 1 in Nagpur, 1 in Aurangabad, 1 more in Pune, 1 in Nashik, and 1 in Bhiwandi, Thane. So these are the 5 things which have identified. Also we have in talks with the department to establish 1 more MMLP in Dighi, the proposed Dighi industrial area. Apart from that, initial stages we are in talks for Akola, Jalgaon, and Sangli. So these are more of agri dominated products which would be traded from there. Secondly, with regards to MIDC, we have categorized this logistics and warehousing as an industrial activity. So as you get any industrial plot for any manufacturing unit, the same would be now be allowed for the logistics sector also. Apart from that, we have also come up with this integrated logistic park policy wherein private developer can come in, he can buy his own land, okay, and we become the SPA, Special Planning Authority, for issuing all types of permissions for that ILP. So that eases out many of your problems of coordinating with different departments for different, permissions and, these things.
We are aware of that. As a matter of fact, we have bought 100 acres in partnership with Blackstone in Pune MIDC, which is in the phase 4 of your MIDC. So we just are getting the handover, Talegaon 4 years. And also that we have built in JNPT 500,000 square feet, where the nodal agency for conversion is also MIDC. Yeah.
So any issue will be ready to help.
Thank you. But my only
so
other
Gati Shakti in action out here. Excellent. Breaking the silos and is offered here. Yeah.
Yeah, the other point I wanted to just ask you is that about all these MMLPs that you all want to get out to private bidders to participate. Before doing that, is there a proper feasibility study that has been made of the viability itself? Okay, that's very important. Otherwise, this will all come all over the place, and many people will bid for it, and then they become an NPA, and then it creates other problems, right? So, okay. Yeah, and also certain amount of standardization. For example, when we built the container freight stations around the ports, at that time the quality of the container freight stations were not of the mark, right? Okay. Then when we built something, we mean few others also, right. Built some world-class facilities, then that became a norm for approval.
Okay.
I think one other point that I want to also make is, so that particular standardization is very important when you bid it out, so that they become really efficient and they become, I don't want to call world-class, but it should be of a high standard with all the inputs and all the ecosystem that is mandated to do, which I'm sure is a part of the whole thing. And lastly, there are a lot of godowns within the cities which are very inefficient.
Right.
And they are substandard, they are fire hazard. It will cause a lot of congestion within the city. That's the reason why steel traders have been asked to move out into a separate location out of the city. So I would really urge the government to really consider moving out the godowns out of the city, or allow the godowns for redevelopment. Because a lot of in-city warehouses are now required for the e-commerce distribution.
Yes, e-commerce distribution.
Right? So those godowns can really become very useful and handy, and they look also good, and they be energy efficient. There is a lot of, there will be safety, security, all sorts of benefits will come out. If you define, you means not MIDC, maybe this is the job of the government, to think about that nationally under the Gati Shakti or under a separate policy.
So if I have to put that in so Gati Shakti is not just if I have to put that saying that what more, right? Yes. Then what is the best utilization of a scarce resource, and land being a scarce resource at some point in time? Maybe something as an input which could go across, saying that do you really need to do this particular infrastructure? Is this the best utilization of it? Maybe that could be thrown out from part of it. And if some asset is getting underutilized, then point that out, saying that this is being underutilized. Can we then augment that capacity somewhere and free up some of it? So for better utilization of that same asset is one important part. I think. Right.
Yeah, there are a lot of
Sorry, just one more from my side as something which could go in, is also from where looking at a benchmarking as well, right, of the assets and its utilization over a period of time. So now we are still at the start part of it. The baby is starting to crawl. Is it getting educated best? Is it doing what its job needs to be done? All of that could be a part which could come through, then benchmark it and see whether that asset, is it really needed? Is it giving the same benefit as it would any other giving? All of it will really then, match that whole scarce part of it. Yeah.
There are a lot of things we can do just to answer the specific questions. Like all the Bharatmala projects, when are being designed, there is a provision when the Bharatmala project is crossing near the city. A space is being acquired by the MORTH only, Ministry of Railway, dedicated for the godowns, what you can say, a connectivity. So when we are discussing the long haul and the short haul in the logistics, the long haul will drop the cargo for the city cargo, the godowns, near the expressway only. And then the smaller freighters can pick that cargo. So the godown shifting from the city limits to the expressway and the space is being identified. This is a mandate given wherever possible, just identify the location, and maybe the private investor and come and set up the parks there, a dedicated, like a smaller hubs, what we can say, a multimodal logistics park.
Like you have a slum development scheme. So similarly, there can be a go-down development scheme in the city.
Good idea, sir. Definitely, we'll take this. I'll write this idea.
There's tremendous improvement happened in Mumbai city in some pockets.
We know the logistics. There is a lot of unfragmented, and definitely the government's initiatives is also uplift the smaller players.
Yes,
it's not only the larger player, the smaller players into the logistics industry.
Yeah, they can
also.
form a society and bring some developer to build better warehouses.
Yeah, of course, good
That's
idea.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's a policy like that.
Yes, definitely. And policy against the standardization of the physical aspect is also one of the aspect thought into the logistics.
And it doesn't have to be only Mumbai. I mean, it's across the country.
Yeah, of course.
All
when
cities,
we discuss about
it's the
policy, it is definitely for the nation as a whole. Right. Again, investment part, we know the shipping or the shipping particularly is a cyclic.
Yeah.
So any investment, definitely that lower peak will come, but again we know the peak, and now we expect the when it is a cycle, the upper cycle, the peak will be more vertical. So we should be prepared for this investment and for the coming, as we discuss, optimistically towards the Vision 2047 goal. So that part definitely we need to take care of that.
Excellent, great. Gentlemen, I think we are fag end of the whole part of it. Probably 2 minutes if anybody want to give a closing remark or additional aspect that you would want to throw on. Yeah, from here, then I'll open it up for question and answers. Anybody else? Any last thoughts?
Any suggestions, definitely we will note it down.
Sure. I'll open the floor for any Q&A. Yeah, Mr. Bose.
I'm Devdutt from TC. One of the experience we are having this entire 30 years, what I heard, is who will be taking the decision on the prioritization of the investment in Gati Shakti, because there can be parallel proposals which can come nearby, and this duplication of investments which has happened in our port sector, where we had built ports nearby, and it took 20 years. I don't want to name the ports, 3 coasts along the coastline. 25 years to really gain into capacity. So as the resource is limited, so I am not clear in this PM Gati Shakti, who is going to take that call?
Right, we agree what you are saying, but again the perspective is different now from the government's point of view. Maybe investment is not coming because the connectivity is not, or the port is not developed. If we see that angle, if we develop that port, maybe a foreign investor or the domestic investor, okay, he sees, okay, there is a fantastic connectivity for this project, there is a land connectivity, and he can set up a plant near maybe a non-major ports, what we think about it, okay. Major ports, when we say it is catering to the mostly the POL and the container product, but the non-major ports are largely dealing with the bulk cargo, the bulk cargos. Maybe if we develop, I'm just giving the idea, the port is developed, maybe the investor or the factory setup, he can think, okay, I have a connectivity and I can set up a port. Now when we discuss about the Sagarmala is not only about the development of the port. Sagarmala is a holistic approach to put the industrial clusters near the port. Like we know the cost, again what we discuss, it's lengthy discussion again. The raw material, like we have the raw material is moving from the port to the hinterland to the north or the east. Why not bring the factory or the manufacturing near to the ports? This will reduce the cost, and maybe all the ports, we may not need to develop the big ports, or of course for the container is a different topic, but maybe for the raw material or the bulk port or the steel manufacturing capacity or the cement plant can be set up near, which can just bring the raw material, just a captive port what we can say, and they can set up maybe nearby 50 or 100 kilometer, and it will easy for them to export again. So that is again the perspective, but maybe now we do not have the smart ports or the developed port. Maybe some investors are not, maybe it is just developing the conducive environment to bring in the investment.
Yeah, my question was different. What I'm trying to say, through the Gati Shakti portal, you may have two projects in the same area, right? Say a case like this.
From that point of view, as of now, Gati Shakti portals, there is a framework, there is a institutional mechanism, there is a committee, 3-level committee who are going. Any project, the stakeholders, the user ministry, maybe it is a MORTH or the state projects. So in fact, there are 7, sir, just to 7 projects we have declined NPG also because it was not see the financial viability or feasibility because alternate mode was already available. So NPG said just to review again because this is seem the doubling of the capacity. So rightly said by the sir, definitely that committee is there who is doing that judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, may I ask a question? Thank you very much. It's been very, very invigorating session. I think lots of good points came up, and it's a good thing to gather and be in one room together. Thank you very much. I have 2 specific questions. The first one really is about, while we talked a lot about, by the way, my name is Rajiv Chauhan, and I represent Aegis Logistics, Aegis group of companies. We are into liquid and petroleum terminaling. So basically, first thing I want to say is, while we talked a lot about containers and the sexy bit of business and, bringing in efficiencies and so on and so forth, let's understand that the cargoes are typically 50-50 divided. 50 is bulk and 50 is the container, all those things, typically in the world. India could possibly be even more. Now, if the 50% of the cargo is bulk, and out of that 25 is liquid bulk, call it POL and so on and so forth, and the balance is dry bulk. So there is a lot to be done in the bulk segment, which I think is the need of the hour. It's a low-hanging fruit. You can get the demurrage out, you can get the handling costs out, you can get the inventory cost out if you were to manage it better. So therefore, there's a lot of scope to do that. So I would recommend that must be included, and therefore Ministry of Petroleum must get involved in this as well. That's the suggestion, really. But my question is, while we talked a lot about the cost, logistics cost, there are some collateral benefits which must go into logistics planning. And I'm now referring to environmental angle. I'm not talking about pollution. I'm not talking about road congestion. I'm not talking about safety. I'm not talking about carbon footprint. And I'm glad that you mentioned carbon footprint for the first time in this conference today. I think those are very, very important. So what are we going to do to incorporate those collateral benefits into the overall scheme of reducing the cost? Thank you.
I have one question. I'm Salim from Globicon Terminals. This is regarding the infrastructure development which is taking place very nicely. However, what I feel is that the policies like RTO rules are traffic havaldars. Now I can give you one small example. Pune we have plant of Mercedes-Benz, wherein the cargo is coming from the vessel which is discharged at the CFS. However, it has to take 24 hours because it's a no-go zone. So these policies also need to be layered. Like the Gati Shakti is a very good portal, and these are the infrastructural hurdles. Like when we talk about just in time, and 12 hours is the traffic block that where heavy vehicle cannot go in. So these are the important things which need to be taken in consideration. Thank you.
I think it's a suggestion very well put across. It's just not the capex part of it, but the operational aspects of it on a day-to-day basis, how that can also be intertwined into this whole bigger portal. So well taken. My only part is that we should not get too excited and put all of it in one portal and kill it, right? So point noted. Maybe we will have some other, in 2 years, a brainwave which will capture this as one idea. But yeah, let's talk about, sure, Gati Shakti is here to stay. I think the previous question was on the whole carbon footprint and any other associated benefits. I think yesterday we had that conversation also, incidentally, with the Ministry of Forest and the Pollution Control Board. That was more from the breaking silos perspective, but I think that's also something which has got layered out here. What are the parts which is there? The additional part that you are talking about is the benefit, and hence that's why in my remark also mentioned that the benchmarking it across that what is this particular project going to give as a delta in comparison to some other project, and how we can then see that, then making that, I think Bose mentioned that as well, making that choice, which one should come, so one versus the other. I think that's all the future that we could like kind of talk about and probably debate it at the committee level, that why this particular project and why not that particular project for various aspects. But point well taken. Yeah. Anybody else wants to comment on it? Feel free to do it as well. If I can say, this could be the last question. Yeah. So just thank you.
Sunil Vasvania from CSLA. This is more of a suggestion than a question. First of all, I'd like to put the two sessions together, this and the previous one, and the question came about over there was about the ports, the global ports. I would say it is rather commendable that during the pandemic, where we had a situation where our ships were actually held up at global ports, and 14% of our capacity was held up. It's come down now to 8%, but actually ideally it should be just 2%. But it's commendable that the Indian ports in general and JNPT in particular handle the traffic very well, that we didn't have any congestion in Indian ports. So when we compare ourselves to global ports, I would say we fared even better than them during the pandemic. But going forward, definitely, as we're going to be placing new orders for new ships, and those larger ships are going to come around, we would want to look at situation at Indian ports where Indian ports can actually handle that larger tonnage. Because what's happening is not only India is the largest growing economy, even PM Gati Shakti says that the Prime Minister says he wants to make India a manufacturing hub. And if that's going to happen, Indian exports are going to grow exponentially. And then, of course, we will need all those facilities. The ports should be able to handle that. We need warehouses. Some of the good suggestions, like Mr. Shashikaran Shetty said, that even the smaller warehouses, there could be a planning, of like slum redevelopment. You have, what about godown redevelopment? I mean, these are just ideas that are being thrown in. But all this will need to fall in place for us to grow exponentially as the economy grows. That's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll draw this to a close. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating. Thank you very much.
May I request you to be on stage for a few minutes more, and may I request Shri Sanjay Sethi ji to join us on stage to present mementos to our esteemed panelists. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye, everybody. A big round of applause. This has been a very enriching and a very interactive session as well, with a wonderful Q&A. Zordar taaliyan. I request sir to present it to Shri Shashikaran Shetty ji. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye. We thank you for your time, sir. And presenting mementos to Shri A.S. Ranganayak ji. And Girish ji, and obviously to Shri Sagar Kadu ji. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye, everybody. And I cannot miss out, obviously, on our convener, a man blessed with a great sense of humor and an amazing convener. Zordar taaliyan ho jaye for Shri Jagannarayan ji. A quick photo op, sir, with the entire team. If you can hold the mementos, it would be great. I request you to please hold the mementos for a quick photo op. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this wonderful panel discussion that we've had. May I request karunga, sir, if you could join us at the podium. And thank you to our esteemed panelists. With this, I'm going to request Shri Sanjay Sethi ji, Chairman JNPA, to join us on stage for summarizing the summit and his closing remarks. Zordar taaliyon se inka swagat kijiye. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause.
We are coming to the close of 2 days Multimodal Maritime Regional Summit, Gati Shakti. We've had fruitful, interesting discussions. I think the objective, of course, one was to commemorate the first year of completion, that is 13th October, but at the same time, also get into some deep dive into where we stand, what more can be done to improve, and also provide a platform to various stakeholders to indulge in what we have been saying, stakeholder consultations. These kind of platforms provide this opportunity for all of us in that sense. We started with an energetic presentation by the BISAC people who, have really taken up this task in the right earnest, whereby not only more and more layers now, but I think they have been able to connect, when we had just started it at that time, in the usual, skepticism of the government system, everybody thought that, how much time will it take, how many people will become a part of it. But I think it's definitely defied all those, all that pessimism at that time. In a way, they far exceeded what they had set out to achieve, I would say. So that was very, very useful for everybody concerned. In fact, I was a part of that original first meeting and the workshop then, which happened at Ahmedabad for this region. So after that, of course, we had these state level plans, because a very, very important part of the regional workshop is that when we are discussing this multimodal connectivity or regional plans, the state government has a very big role, and central government in isolation probably cannot make it happen. So we had the CEO of MMB making that detailed presentation about talking about specific rail and road projects in Maharashtra. And we all know and understand that some of these non-major ports have that huge potential. Of course, this whole debate on how many of those non-major ports, what is the ideal distance, how can we really... So this prioritization question to my mind is very, very important, which was just now raised, because this cannot be a blind understanding of this whole infrastructure. When we are discussing all this, at the back of our mind, what are we trying to do? We are trying to contribute to the economy. We are trying to say, okay, within this sector, if I have to still name one thing, it is decreasing the logistics cost. So if decreasing the logistics cost, if I really make it work, then it is about optimization. This is not a maximization exercise of some sort where I say, I did 100 projects. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that I did the right, appropriate, adequate projects, whether 50 or whether 40, but the output and outcome analysis of that has to be done in the right earnest. So those points were also made by various speakers. The General Manager Railways, of course, gave us an overall perspective on what Railways is trying to do here. And while DFC might be one part of it, Central Railways contributes big time to what happens, how rail movement happens in our port. In JNPA, it's not just the number of lines, but again, when we talk about efficiency, when we are discussing this a modal shift, which even in the last 2 or 3 years going from, we had gone down to 14%. So from 14%, we are now 17 to 17.5%. which is a huge big thing. And when somebody said that even without the DFC also, you know, another 3, 4, 5% is a possibility, which basically means that we need to look at the efficiency of operations, the kind of infrastructure they can add. But typically, all this contributing to the ease of doing business. So those 3 verticals that we make on infrastructure, digitization, and processes improvement. So all those 3 ultimately come together here also. So most of these issues I thought were discussed threadbare. The data session, of course, discussed issues on data harmonization, on even data standardization, where at some level it was thought that obviously standardization also cannot be a blind objective. It has to be contextual. Any outcome, I keep saying this, that has to talk about both process and context. It cannot be just either process or just a particular context. So when you marry the two, then only you will get the appropriate answers. All the other sessions today, since most of you were present in today's sessions, I will not try and repeat too much out of it, but the whole idea of discussing the vision and also the outcome is that to set this whole thing in perspective, that we are not doing something just for the heck of it. I mean, the data in isolation doesn't mean anything. Creating infrastructure in isolation doesn't mean anything. Whether a infrastructure should precede or succeed some other development are those real questions that these kind of platforms help you to answer. Definitely, as was just said, that we should not now convert this into an answer for everything. So that you, as Jagan was saying, that then you will kill this also. But you know, the idea is that it does set an aspiration. The first thing that we see is that there is a certain confidence building. So look at it as that, number one. When the private sector comes and says here, now we believe that, you know, and it was said in a, according to me, in just the right, this thing that it's not that everything is magical, but well, we can see the acceleration. So the word used was, now it has got accelerated. After liberalization, something like this happened, but then now it's got accelerated, which is a big thing. It provides that confidence, which in turn translates into private investments. Private investments are a very slow process, painfully slow process. I was CEO of MIDC before this assignment, and I can only tell you that those business decisions that are discussed in newspapers as if they are, you know, they are made in one evening, they are not. The foreign investment that we talk about that comes into A country or B state or whatever is a function of so many things, and it is a long, painful process. So if we have reached that position where these kind of interventions are leading to better confidence to make private investments happen, that's a very, very big output and outcome. Similarly, if government deliveries have improved, government deliveries about talking about, when we say, okay, typically the cost overrun is 25% or whatever, or the time overrun is 2 years or 2.5 years. And if in the last 3 or 4 years, if you see a substantial reduction in that, where you see that that delivery part has improved, that is the real, you know, proof of pudding, as they say, you know. So I think that is the main important part. Of course, we were able to discuss that what are the improvement areas. We discussed how we can deepen the process of silo breaking. The breaking of silos, the process has to be deepened. The data, again, can be utilized better. The management and utilization of data can be better. Of course, this should lead to an optimization exercise. But I think the whole exercise sets the dream of a country to achieve its best potential. It's not about always saying, I have to compare to a Rotterdam, I have to compare to this in the port sector. It is about the best potential that can be achieved here. I think it sets that process. On that note, I think it has been a very, very useful, very, very fruitful exercise, and I will thank all the participants for being here, and I wish the whole team all the best. Thank you very much.
Can we have a loud round of applause for Shri Sanjay Sethi ji for always inspiring us with his choice of words and beautifully summarizing the summit. With this, may I request every member of the team to rise up for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Vande Mataram. A big thank you to everybody. I'd like to thank our esteemed dignitaries, speakers, conveners, panelists who took time out from their busy schedule to make PM Gati Shakti Multimodal Maritime Regional Summit 2022 a grand success. Special thanks to the JNPA and MBPA teams for putting in all the efforts. We look forward to your continual participation in all our future initiatives and summits as we work towards a unanimous cause of PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan for Multimodal Connectivity. Pragati ki Gati, Bharat ki Shakti. This is RJ Rahul Mandal, thanking you for your participation and your presence on behalf of the entire team. Please join us for lunch and networking in the next hour. Bon appetit. Thank you so much.